Okay, can people hear me now? And someone talk, so we'll see if they can hear you.
Hello.
Test.
Okay, it's picking up the audio now. Sorry about that, gang. Okay, let's try this again. Welcome to yet another episode of WIC TV. It's a cross-ideological space where we come together to talk about issues both political and cultural, from the silly to the serious. Today, we are going to be talking about the recent budget bill that passed and I believe was signed into law recently by Donald J. Trump. The big, beautiful bill, or the big bastard of a bill, whatever you want to call it, right? It is a piece of legislation that many on the left and right had issues with, though the right eventually voted for it for the most part, with a few exceptions. Today we're going to be talking about whether or not this budget bill, is indeed beautiful. Is it something that's going to be positive for America or negative for America, and why? And I've got some interesting guests on today to talk about it. Let's get into it. Let's give the mic first to Vigilante. Tell people who you are, what you think, and what is your opinion on the subject. Go ahead.
I'm the Vigilante TV. I'm a progressive or leftist, typically on the socialist leaning side of things. In my opinion, there are some good things in this bill, like the no tax on overtime thing, which was done poorly, unfortunately. There are a lot more bad things in this bill, cutting environmental protections or incentives for doing environmentally friendly things, massive cuts towards Medicaid and SNAP, which are going to overwhelmingly hurt the poor. It does help the middle class a little, like certain cuts help the middle class a little bit, but it's mostly going to overall hurt America. Millions of people are going to end up losing Medicaid. It's going to end up resulting in a lot of hospitals closing that rely on Medicaid funding. This is not gonna help very many people.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. We'll get into it as we go. Next up, first time guest on my show for one of these panel things, at least. Loki, go ahead.
How's it going? I'm Loki. My Twitch chat is going to be Dynamai. When it comes to the big beautiful bill, I generally agree with it. The only aspect of the big beautiful bill that I would typically not agree with is the tax deficit. And yeah, I'm a libertarian.
Okay, well, thank you for being here. Short and sweet. We'll get into it. And again, when you can turn on your camera, please do so. Next up, Nonfon, no stranger to my channel. We're glad to have him back. Hi.
Yeah, what's up? I'm Nonfon. I'm your typical liberal streamer. Stream on YouTube at Nonfon, Twitch and Kick at Nonfon420. I talk mostly about economics, usually a lot of boring stuff. I think basically, no matter like what type of person you are, you should probably be opposed to this bill. I think obviously if you're more towards the progressive side, you don't like it because it's a lot of tax cuts that are oftentimes regressive in nature. I think even if you are a libertarian and supply sider, you should not like the fact that we're increasing the deficit so much during a time when we should be reducing the deficit, especially because a lot of these random like tax deduction, tax cuts things are increase administrative complexity that libertarians and progressives alike should not want.
Okay, and with that, oh, we got one more. BoredCows, another first-time guest on my stream. What are your thoughts here? Who are you? Why should we listen to you? What are your thoughts? Go ahead.
I'm BoredCows. I'm a center-right type of person, and first, no legislation can be perfect. We're in a democracy. Everything's built on compromise. The big major things I would disagree with it would obviously be the fiscal spending. Nobody really likes that. Things I do like about it is border security increase and the pro-natalist stance it takes with the Trump budgets, where you get $1,000 per child when they're born. Trump accounts is what they're called. My bad.
Okay, no problem. Thank you for being here, and we'll get into it as we go. And with that, the floor is open. Again, please, if I tell you to shut up, please shut up, because if I do tell you that, it's because either A, I have a question, or B, you're all yelling and screaming at each other. No one can hear what's being said. But yeah, go ahead. What are our thoughts? Open discussion. Go ahead.
Should we go to the border crisis first?
If that's what you want to take it, go for it, sir.
All right. I do not believe that we have a causal obligation to these people that are actively coming over. And when it comes to the action, like New York, California, we can look at the taxes. One of the biggest taxes that they won't be able to like pay into is income tax, which when we look at IRS, this is something that they're not paying for if they're working under the like stable jobs, or it's going to be property tax because we can look at the action of how much taxes we've lost. If you guys want a source for this, I can give it to you.
Right. So I mean, I would say like, number one, I would also just like generally have moral concerns with if we are spending billions of dollars to build detention facilities. Is there any possible way that we are going to be able to deport this many number of immigrants humanely or whatever? But also, like, secondly, I
we
do
have a
think
causal
that most of the
obligation,
evidence shows that a lot of times immigrants are either a fiscal positive or they have children who end up being fiscal positives. And I think if you deport a bunch of working age illegal immigrants or whatever, you're going to end up removing their children from America as well when they would grow up to be net tax contributors.
Wait, their children might be a tax contributor, but that doesn't make them a tax contributor. Even
They
with
are
the
tax
But
contributors,
there's a
though.
wait,
long-term
no,
benefit there. But
wait, a long term.
Hold
Even
on.
with that, at the situation taking place, they're a net negative. If you want a source, you can go look at Fair Federal for Americans Immigration Reform, 2003, when it comes to this action. When it comes to like the total taxes, total federal taxes paid was 16 billion. When it comes to federal, state tax, or local taxes paid was 15. 15 wait one sec 15 billion, and then when it comes to total taxes contribute was 31 billion. But when it comes to us paying for like their housing, anything like this, while they're actively seeking asylum, everything like this, we spent a total of 182 billion just for them.
yeah, so like I'm
I
familiar
have
with the FAIR study broadly. I think they make like a number of errors. There's a whole back and forth that they've gone through with the Cato Institute and some other authors in immigration. But one big thing that FAIR does is they count they count the like welfare and benefits that immigrants' children get. But then, like I mentioned earlier, don't account for the fact that their children will then grow up to be net tax contributors and actually pay back most of the money they use. And that's on top of I think there's other errors that they make. I can go through
Yeah,
my
the
notes and
child
try to find
wait,
them,
the
but.
child is actively paying back for what one person does, not their family. When it comes to the action still at hand,
Well,
what
no.
causal obligation do we have to them?
Well, I'm not saying we necessarily have an obligation to them. I'm just saying typically, it's a net benefit that they are here, right? So like I understand the child. When I say the child is paying back, what I mean is like if the immigrant family consumes $10,000 of welfare benefits, well, the child might grow up and pay back $20,000, pay
Might,
$20,000 in
or does this
taxes over
happen
his
every single
lifetime.
time?
So what? Sorry.
Might, or is this every single time? Would you say that this is the majority case
On
or
average,
the minority?
right? So,
On
there's a good
average.
study that came out like relatively recently that studied like upward mobility and immigration in the U.S. for like that last 100 years, and they found like, hey, look, it seems like immigrants have just like always been more upwardly mobile than native-born citizens. So even today, when immigrants come over, not only do their parents, wage increase relative to their what they're making at home, but their children grow up to be in a higher quintile than their parents do usually, and they end up being net tax contributors.
Wait, but with the initial action of the parents coming over here, do we have a causal obligation to their parents?
Like I said, I don't believe I don't believe we necessarily have an obligation to them.
Okay,
Now,
so then why
I
should
do
we
believe
keep them
people.
here?
As I mentioned, what I was about to say is one, I think they are a net benefit to be here. I think
In what
them
sense?
working, contributing to our economy. What? Sorry.
In what sense? Because when it comes to the illegal immigration, with the parents actively being a burden on the tax dollars, which we can look at like New York, California, New York is going to be the best bet. The smaller communities in like Watertown around the military installations and the smaller communities are actively paying more taxes so they could be able to live here. And when it comes to the illegal immigrants, since they are not paying income tax, which the IRS is going to get the most.
That's not true.
Wait, you're saying that income tax isn't like the biggest part of IRS?
No, I'm
Go ahead,
saying that
Vigilante.
illegal immigrants in some cases do pay taxes. It's actually reported that in total, illegal immigrants last year paid 97 billion in income taxes.
Wait, would you say that's
I
across?
do have a source for that.
Yeah, can I get the source for that?
Yes.
Just put it in the group
Because
chat.
yeah, because for this one, I'll copy and paste this one. When it comes to income tax, is going to be the biggest spot that we're going to be losing money to illegal immigrants.
Okay, so
Well, I mean,
let's
obviously,
hold on.
hold on,
Wait.
real quick.
Okay, just
Could
real
I-
quick, Nonfon, and then I want to bring us back on track.
Yes, yeah, so look, obviously illegal immigrants don't pay income tax, but there are other taxes they pay. And secondly, a
What
lot of times when
taxes do
people
they
say
pay?
illegal immigrants, excise taxes and depending on the state taxes. But again, when a lot of people
Do they
say
pay
illegal immigrants,
federal?
when a lot of people, can I just finish my thing? When a lot of people say illegal immigrants, what they really mean is just asylum seekers. And a lot of asylum seekers have work authorization, and they do pay the tax. They do pay into the tax system more or
Yeah,
less
you
like
pay the
any
positive
regular
claim.
U.S.
Can I get a
worker.
source?
Again, I would encourage everyone just look up like CBO, undocumented immigrants. The CBO did an estimate a while ago, estimating that the surge of immigration under Biden would actually reduce the deficit over 10 years by $900 billion. So presumably, if we're deporting all these immigrants or whatever, not only are we going to spend money on deportations, but we're also going to lose out on that $900 billion that they would otherwise contribute to the deficit or contribute to the taxes.
Yeah, I don't want to recenter on this. Like, I don't want this to just be an immigration debate, right? Because there's a lot to talk about immigration. What does the big, beautiful bill, the big bastard bill, whatever you want to call it, what does the budget bill have to do with this? In what ways does it either benefit or help the situation, or in your view, if that's your view, hurt the situation? That's what I want to, that's what I care about today. That's what I want to hear, right? What do we think?
Well, I think it allows us to gain kind of natural sovereignty over our borders again, because there's a lot of things I do think we should be prioritizing with our borders. Tend to be a bit more pro-immigration than most people. One of the things I dislike about having more of an open border is that, well, you get the people that benefit the most from it are going to be people from like Mexico and Latin America. It kind of is a slap in the face. Everybody kind of waiting across the world that would also want to come over, participate in the American dream, and then also when they come in legally in some cases versus illegally. Illegally, you have so many different problems that pop up. You're like, well, do they pay income taxes? Do they not? If they're here legally, you get to like track them. Do you get the car? That's easier for them to start working. Whole bunch of other things.
With the money that we're actively taxing when it comes to New York and other states, me as a libertarian, I believe in like a very minimum taxation. But with us actively paying for these people to be able to be in this country illegally, seeking asylum that we didn't cause them to be in a state of dependence, I would just say that I would rather spend like maybe $100, send them back to their home country, and not worry about them instead of trying to.
I mean,
keep
it
them
costs
in.
like I think the most recent estimates are about like $13,000 per deportation, and then again, a lot of immigrants probably contribute more than $13,000 in taxes directly, and then also indirectly, they obviously have indirect effects as well. If we just produce more things, like if businesses can construct stuff easier because there's more immigrant construction workers, there's going to be more taxes paid by businesses, and that there's a study from Minneapolis in 2020 that basically found that exact effect, that immigrants actually end up contributing. Even low-skill immigrants who don't have high school degrees end up contributing net taxes when they are when you account for the indirect effects that they have.
When it comes to the illegal immigrants, as the action of them working under the table, do they pay income tax and do they pay property tax typically, or do they stay with family members that have property?
No. So if you're talking like again, like strictly undocumented immigrants, a
Yep.
lot of these people don't pay into the tax system. But how many? There aren't probably not as many of those people as you think, right? Because a lot of people who came over under Biden and everything were asylum seekers who were granted work authorization after being in the U.S. for about 90 days. I think was the standard under him.
Wait, do you have a causal obligation to asylum seekers?
I don't know how many times I have to say this. I
Take
don't
a
think we
shot.
necessarily have an obligation for them. I think that they benefit us, and it's a net cost to deport them, both in the sense of the deficit and in the sense of just our economy, generally speaking. And I would hope that if you think that immigrants are draining our spending so much, you would at least be opposed to how much we're cutting taxes and how much that's going to increase spending or increase deficit spending, especially because that's gonna lead interest rate cost increase, right? Like that's going to be a huge expense. Is interest rate cost increases? That's probably going to be way more than illegal immigrants could ever do to us.
Wonderful.
I was gonna wait for the other person, Vitch, whatever his name is.
All right, so while there are good things that we could have done in order to help the immigration situation, like putting more funding towards immigration judges, all this bill really seems to do to affect the border situation is just throw money towards ICE with things like a $10,000 signing bonus to join ICE, which is actually fucking retarded. It doesn't help the immigration situation like at all.
Just a question on that for
Okay.
you. Because again, as I understand it, they got almost 200 billion. It's just short of $200 billion for ICE funding. Is that correct? Am I getting that number
I
correct?
thought it was 350
Uh,
billion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
something.
I
350.
think it was more than that. Hold
Oh,
on.
fair enough. Fair
I
enough.
have the
Wait, was it
bill
like a 200 billion increase and make it total 350? So the number I got was 350.
Fair enough. My question, though, to Vigilante and to Nonfon, if he shares Vigilante's stance here, is would that not increase the effectiveness of ICE at rooting out illegal immigrants that are in this country? Would that not help at least solve that problem to some extent? What is your main objection to funding ICE more in this case?
So the thing is, when it comes to illegal immigration, the majority of people who are classified as illegal here are people who overstayed their visas, which means they're just going to come. Those are the people that just came in and disappeared. There's not much additional funding towards ICE that could really help finding those people because a lot of the times they come in and pretty much just disappeared. It's kind of hard to find those people in general. Throwing more money to get more officers isn't going to help that.
Do you?
Yeah, I
agree?
mean, I think I would have two concerns, like I've said earlier. One is just kind of a like general moral concern. Like if we're spending, I think it's like $30 billion to build some new, detention centers and everything. One is just like a general like how morally could we treat immigrants if we're rounding them up and putting them in the detention centers? I have not seen that go well historically. And then again, the second one is just like the more kind of broad economic concern of like, I don't even think that this is it's likely not a net positive for the deficit, right? Or for our economy in general.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I
Go
had a
ahead,
question
please.
for no frown on that. No frown. So one of the things you stated before was that by attracting a lot of these low skill immigrants to like work in construction, you are going to get like more construction happening because you're increasing labor supply, right?
Yeah.
All right. So would you admit that that does harm like local workers who are in that field because now they're having increased like demand, like increased supply in the product they're selling, which is their labor, hence they're going to get like
I
lower
mean,
wages
it's
from
going
it.
to be. It's always just going to depend on the size of the amount of immigrants and on how many people they're competing with, basically. So like you can look at like any like reasonable person, even okay George Borjas, right? If you look at all of his studies for all the flaws I think they have, even he will tell you like it looks like immigrants like decrease wages a little bit for high school dropouts and basically have no effect on anyone else, and that's in the short term, right? Like a lot of his research on the Madrigal boat list is controversial because it looks like wages quickly rebound after he initially found that they dropped somewhat for low skill immigrants. But I do think that most of the evidence shows that immigrants basically have a null effect on the wages, and when they do, it only affects about maybe at most 8% of the U.S. workforce.
Wait,
All
then
right, yeah. So I would agree with you on like a lot of that, but one of the things I have a problem with is that when it comes to like people are more than willing to accept a lot of low skill immigration workers, right? But not when it comes to the same problem. It's like when you look at the Cuban doctor program that was cut under Obama, you saw a lot of doctors here. So a lot of low skill workers do feel there's a double standard here, saying, hey, we want all these low skill workers because we don't want to pay like our local construction worker a lot to be building us a house, but we don't want to have all these doctors or stuff coming in from overseas and causing our price to go down.
I mean, I'm probably more in favor of high skill immigration than I am of low skill immigration. I can't speak for how politicians have thought about it historically or whatever, but I think we should have more high skill immigration as well as low skill
Yeah,
immigration.
and so this would be my core attack here. Then is that by having like a solid border procedure, because open like if you're a high skill immigrant, there's no reason for you to really cross the border. Whether you can't work in that, you can't work as a doctor if you cross the border illegally. You need all these certifications and credentials coming over. So this illegal immigration typically only harms the lower skill end, and it doesn't really affect the higher skill end. If you really wanted to increase higher skill immigration and get this down, wouldn't you want to just have like your border secured and then advocate for more higher skilled immigration?
I mean, again, it kind of depends what you mean by like secure border, right? Like, I think we have the mechanisms already without even extra funding to essentially secure the border. I mean, Donald Trump has basically cut border crossings to zero, or whatever, by just like not processing asylum claims, right? So I think we already have those mechanisms. Like part of the bill I know is like extra funding for the border wall. It's like, brother, we already have a border wall, like most of the border. Like, do we really need more? That's not going to have that big of an effect, So I think to the extent that we want to, decrease low skill immigration, which again I don't really want to do. It's like I believe we already have the mechanisms by which to secure the border. I believe you don't have to spend a bunch of money on detention centers to deport people who are already here, and I believe you should just make it easier to legally immigrate to the U.S. without so that less people are coming over illegally.
Yeah, my only contention here would be is that I'm just talking from like a political perspective. Do you think it would be more like politically advantageous to say to people, "Hey, I want more immigrants, and I'm just not only going to target like low skilled people." It's like then you could get these low skilled workers who are typically against immigration, be like, "Hey, look, your doctor visits are going to be cheaper. You're going to have quicker times to go see a doctor. You're going to have more time to see this, right?" But with the way we have it now,
I'm sure that's always
if
going to
they're
be.
only getting affected.
I'm sure that's almost always going to be more politically advantageous, but I don't really this isn't a conversation about how we should message on it. It's a conversation about whether this is a net benefit. And I think all the evidence shows that these type of deportations are not a net benefit, or that type of border security.
It's a benefit on like how this bill would work out. And so like if this bill passes and we do actually get to like control who's coming in and out, from that perspective, now we can say, hey, now that we have a control board, we can control who comes in, and that way we can say like low skill workers, we're maybe importing 1 million low skill workers, but we're also importing 1 million high skill workers. So both you in the lower classes and the people in the upper classes are both getting affected the same.
And to be clear, it did pass.
Well, I mean,
the
if this
bill
bill
is law now, so
Yeah, January
Yes.
4th.
Yeah, it was signed on
We're talking
Trump.
about like it's going to be how it would benefit in the future.
I mean, maybe if this bill had some positives for high skill immigrants, then maybe we could have that discussion. But I mean, like I said, I believe we already have the mechanisms by which to enforce the border. I don't believe we need a bunch of border wall on a bunch of empty territory that no one is crossing anyway. And from my understanding, this bill does introduce certain like fees even for like higher skill immigrants to try to come to the U.S. And I think that's obviously a net bad. And again, if you guys are so concerned about the strain that immigrants put on like the welfare system and everything, like, why are we not talking about how much interest rate costs are probably going to go up because of the bill? Why are we not talking about how much the deficit in general is going to go up just because of the tax cuts? Like,
okay, well, why don't we talk about that then, if you want to talk about that? So we mentioned the immigration stuff, and we can get back to it. I'm sure we will at some point. But what other issues, to Nonfon and to Vigilante, what other issues do you have with this bill? Why do you think it's a net negative overall? Please be specific. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, for one, I think it, like I said in my opening, increases the deficit in a time where we should be looking at trying to decrease it. I'm not like 100% opposed to cutting spending in some areas. Obviously, I'm probably more progressive, so I'm going to be in favor of more raising taxes and cutting spending. But we're cutting taxes way too fucking much at a time where we shouldn't be doing that, because the economy is relatively strong right now. And that's it's coming at a especially I would say like dangerous time, right? Because the debt is already so high, and interest rate costs tend to go up, not quite exponentially, but more than linearly with the outstanding debt. And it's at a time where no one wants to buy our debt because there's so much uncertainty around tariffs and things like that other countries simply are not buying as many U.S. bonds. There was already a Treasury auction recently that did not have as many buyers as they normally do because there's so much uncertainty about these things.
I mean,
I'd say my biggest problem with this bill is going to be the Medicaid cuts. I mean, it cut $88 billion for Medicaid. It added the federal work requirements, which work requirements in general are okay, but they should be left up. Those are one thing that should be left up to the states. And then it also increased the copay for people that are from 100% of the poverty line to 138% of the poverty line to $35. Previously, it was like $3.
Hey, what are your answers to that, gentlemen on the other side? So Loki and BoredCows, what would you have to say to someone who says, I think that the deficit is too high already and it's getting higher. This bill cuts Medicaid, and I like Medicaid. It cuts SNAP, and I like SNAP. Why is it still a good bill despite those things? Or do you think that those cutting Medicaid is good actually? What are your thoughts here? Go ahead, please. I feel like I'm
Right.
pulling
I'll
teeth
go.
on getting the discussion going here. I'm not gonna lie, right? You guys are all very sedate, but go ahead.
Well, I like to let people finish, but I largely agree with Nonfon. That is probably like my biggest critique of the bill is the increased spending. For people that are like really, I don't think it's as big of a deal as people tend to make it out to be, because we've been spending like crazy. Both parties have been doing it since Bush. And the big problem I see is just structural, because we seem to be in like one party's in and the next party's in, and no party wants to be the guy that's like, I'm going to save a lot of money. That way, all the money I save can just be spent by the next party, and it's going to continue on down the line like that. No political party is willing to make that sacrifice, and kind of far from me to say, hey, Republicans are at fault for this. Can't expect them to do
Yeah,
it.
but
As for the
this doesn't really save money because it adds money to the deficit.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. I can't really blame the Republicans for spending money when it's like, if they save money, then the next guy that gets in is just going to spend money and be like, oh, look at all the good I'm doing for you. Same with the Democrats. I can't blame the Democrats for spending a lot of money, because if they save money, the Republicans are going to come in, spend all the money that they save, and be like, oh, hey, look at all the good I'm doing for you. Yeah, I think if you're worried about the deficit, it's a stronger, like, structural problem that we have to somehow fix. I don't have any good solutions for it. If you guys have some, let me know, but I don't have any good ones. As for Medicaid, like, if you are an able-bodied person, from what I was reading, I think having like a work permit is kind of what you kind of need to do. Some of it, I
I
don't know.
mean,
I have to like read into it a bit more, but that's about it. You want to respond?
So like, I mean, and the big issue with the like Medicaid work requirements, obviously, it's just, for one, there just are not many like able-bodied working people on Medicaid who like aren't working. It's like, I think it's like it's like 3% of working age people on Medicaid are not working. And if you think about it, those are not the people consuming Medicare benefits, right? Young men sitting at home all day playing on their Xbox are not the ones getting expensive surgeries or anything. It's the disabled people, it's the elderly people, it's the children, it's people that actually consuming the benefits are people who work requirements aren't supposed to affect. Now, obviously, we know historically from states like Arkansas that have imposed work requirements, most people who lose benefits due to work requirements are people who are working, right? We have evidence of this also from when COVID era eligibility rules were changed, right? Like states sent out notices requiring people to recertify their eligibility. 70% of people who lost benefits from that were not people who weren't eligible. They were people who messed up the paperwork, right? So at the end of the day, with work requirements, you don't get the desired effect of able-bodied people working. You get a bunch of poor people get fucked out of their benefits, and you get a bunch of bureaucrats in the U.S. government trying to track how many, filling out more paperwork, wasting more time trying to track these things. That's why a lot of libertarians, by the way, don't like these work requirements either.
I don't agree with like universal Medicaid in the first place. I don't have a causal obligation to another person. This is upon them. When it
Take a
comes to the
shot,
action
Dennis.
of when it comes to the action of Medicaid, I completely believe that we should cut Medicaid, Social Security, and a lot of actions like this, which I agree with Trump. He is going to be cutting the action of Medicaid a lot more, unless if one of you guys can give me a justified like causal obligation that I have for these people,
Take
why I
another
should
shot.
pay.
All right, so it's
I mean,
more.
look,
I would say it's less of a causal obligation. It's more of we're going to have to pay taxes and things like that in general. It's better for the government to benefit us as the citizens with the taxes we pay instead of doing things like overfunding police or overfunding the military or
Yeah,
overfunding
I
ICE.
agree with police,
There,
ICE, and them because they protect private property.
I
When it comes to the
it's
action of ICE
hold
being
on.
able to stop the infringement
It,
where like illegal immigrants actively, like if you're going to sit here, we are paying the taxes for this. So if we're going to cut the tax spending or any action like this, yeah, I'm going to say that we should just get rid of these actions or limit it to the most we can.
things like
I mean, look,
Medicaid, things like
Vigilante, go ahead.
the Pell Grant and all that are all net positives for society. I mean, it
Oh, and I posted
Medicaid.
something since
Oh,
you wanted to
But just
sit here and say that.
hold on, let Vigilante finish his point, then you can add. But Vigilante, go ahead, please.
Medicaid allows a lot of hospitals to continue to keep running. It pays for the people who aren't insured, whether or not they are on Medicaid, but through subsidies. It is what allows a lot of hospitals to keep running. That's why Medicaid is a good thing. This bill, a lot of the cuts that it cut a lot of things that it cuts are literally those funds. So a lot of hospitals are going to end up closing because of this. It prevent and it also prevents more people from being uninsured, which means the doctor's offices and stuff are still getting paid instead of just having to take on the burden of millions of people that don't have medical coverage.
Right. I mean, I
Oh,
think
and
clearly, the outcomes from having Medicaid seem to be like pretty positive, right? Like I understand you personally, may have your own theory of or own belief in private property and whatever autonomy concerns you may have with that. But look, certainly, like it seems like there's evidence that, like, oh, if you enroll a bunch of people in Medicaid, it seems like you do reduce their risk of mortality. Well, at like not at super insane costing, it's like $170,000 per life year or something. Well, also just securing. I think it is just a net positive that poor people's suffering is reduced because they don't have to deal with the stress of medical bankruptcy. They don't have to deal with the stress of maybe not being able to get preventative treatment and having more expensive treatments later on. That just seems to be like an overall net good thing for society.
Oh, and you made the positive claim. What was the percentage of people that use like Medicaid and they don't work? You were making like a small percentage about this.
Yeah, it seems to be like about 3 to 5%, depending on what survey
Can I
you
get a
use.
can I get a source for this? Because when we look at KFF, typically when it comes to people, the biggest part is going to be people working full time, and then from this, if we go into the situation, like disability or any action taking place, working full time, this is going to be based off of them. If they're actively working a job, it's going to be on them. They can find a job that gives them medical or not. But to the situation of like working part time or like caregiving or not working because of disability, it's only 10%. Majority of this is going to be people that are working full time. I would just say that these people have like the obligation if they want this like insurance, it's upon them.
Right. So for one, I mean, my source, Matt Brunegg has some good articles about this, right? Like I think he has 2 articles about this using some different surveys, and both of them basically find the same thing that it's between like 3 to 5% of people are people on Medicaid who aren't working like long term, right? And the rest of them are disabled or would soon be off Medicaid in like less than a year, or it maybe didn't work 80 hours in 1 month, but worked 80 hours or more than 80 hours almost like every other month, right? So we might have conflicting sources or whatever, but from the data I've seen from Matt Brunegg using 2 different surveys, this is a very small group of people. And again, this group of people is not the one consuming their health benefits. They're not the ones driving the cost of Medicaid. It's the people who are disabled, okay? It's the people who get these expensive surgeries and require expensive treatment. What was the other thing? Sorry, I think there was one other thing you mentioned.
Which one? When it comes to the people actively working, it's their obligation to get medical if they want this. Is not
Oh,
everyone
right.
else's burden.
I mean, look again. So I would say like generally like it's kind of hard to say that like it is people's obligation to go find a job to get healthcare when like
It's upon
obviously like
them, not mine.
macroeconomic conditions and everything play a big role in that, right? Like I would say obviously involuntary unemployment is the thing. Employers are the one that set the hours, they set the demand for labor, right, based on macroeconomic conditions generally. So it's hard to say that like on an individual level it's like really someone's fault for not being able to find
It is.
employment that can cover their health insurance, right? But again, like it just seems like
Walmart, there's a
it is
lot of
just a
jobs
net
that
benefit. Like,
actively give
like it is just
wait,
a
there's a lot of jobs that actively give health insurance. If they are working a job that doesn't give health
right.
insurance, in this hypothetical, let's just say that they enjoy doing this job, but it doesn't give health like insurance and they want to keep doing this act. Is this on us to pay for their health insurance or is it on them?
I think it's a net benefit to pay for the health
Wait, you're
insurance. Yes,
saying that benefit,
but
but even with this situation, I would still say that it's their obligation for this action. I have no moral obligation to them, and with the act being done where it's coming out of
and
my taxes for Medicaid and other actions, yeah, you can say as much as you want that, oh, it's a net benefit that they're going to be able to contribute whatever the fuck. But with the act of me still paying for their insurance that I do not have an obligation to, I find this immoral.
I understand you don't believe that you have an obligation to do it. That's probably because of your own like theory of private property, which I probably have pretty major disagreements with. But I think like what the government should concern itself with is like generally just doing programs that make its citizenry better off. And I think that's what most people's moral intuition is. And I think we should probably focus on doing things that do that. So Medicaid seems to be that thing. thing? And I also would just ask, do you deny that like involuntary unemployment is a thing? Do you think that anyone could just get a job at any time if they wanted to?
Yeah, I would just say it's on them. If they want like a certain type of job, there's very much actively the job market is open right now for people.
Right. What about, so here's a question. What about in a
When was
recession?
the last time you were in the job market?
Where?
I said, when was the last time you were in the job market?
I've been in it since I got out of active duty military.
So are you unemployed?
But
Okay,
when?
so
No, like I've been in the job market since like
Okay,
January.
what
no
he's
problem. I got
asking,
I think- I
hired.
think-
hold on,
he's
hold on.
working
Let
right
me
now.
bridge this because I think you guys are talking past each other, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Vigilante. But what I think that he's asking you is, when's the last time you looked for a job?
Not even like 4 months ago, 5 months.
Okay.
I got
Oh.
hired within like 4 days.
Because the last time
I
I,
mean, look,
looked
so-
for a job, it took me like 6 months to find a job.
Were you trying to look for a certain type of job field, or were you looking for the
No, I was fucking applying. I was applying to fucking Walmart and shit too, and it still took me like 6 months to find a
Wait,
fucking
what
job.
about manual labor? Did you apply there?
I ended up working in a factory. That's where
Okay.
I currently work. So,
So do you understand that there's day labor that you can go to where they will be able to help you get a job really quick? Or when it comes to the other situations, so if you want a job, you can actually do this pretty fucking easy. Best case
mean,
that we can look at is
I-
day labor in every state.
now I will concede a little bit. I also have a little bit of a special situation where I have severe back problems, so I can't do super intensive manual labor. So like I do have to be a little bit picky. Like I can't apply to the shit that you're talking about, but I can do like Walmart. I can do certain types of factory work, stuff like that.
So you were looking for a
So-
certain type of job field. When it comes to the job market, there's actively manual labor is one of the biggest ones, CDLs, where there's a bunch of companies that are actively willing to pay you to be able to get your CDL and cover the schooling. When it comes to truck drivers, yeah, there's a lot of blue collar jobs that people do not want to do, which if we're talking job market, this is part of it. Most people would like to be inside. If you want like a source for this, I can just say that this is anecdotal, or I can actually give you a source for this.
All right, and then
no, I won't disagree on
oh,
that.
wait.
There's a I mean, there's
yeah,
a reason
I just want to
why
ask.
when it comes to like farm work and stuff, there's a lot that's mostly covered by illegal immigrants or immigrants in general. So
Right.
Go
So,
ahead, Nonfon.
two things, again, I would stress most Medicaid benefits are not paid out to people who otherwise could be working. A lot of it is just people who are disabled. And I think Medicare is still a net benefit for people
Since you
like
made a
that at the
positive
very
claim,
least.
I would like a source for
Additionally,
this.
what, sorry?
You made a positive claim here that it's mostly or like the majority of it is going to be on the disability, which with the source I gave only said 10% of this is.
10% of people on it or 10% of claims
Yeah,
paid out?
10%. Yeah, when it comes to the payout action of like people being on like social security, not social, but like Medicaid, only 10% of it is typically going to be some type of person that has some type of medical issue or like where they can't work. Where it
You
raises
think,
the
how much of it
Medicaid.
is it's children or elderly people that aren't expected to work either?
Yeah, when it comes to children, they're gonna add this into the 7.8% of like the people that they did inside of the study.
So
Okay, I mean,
people not
I can
required
look
to
into it.
work from
I
what I'm
kind of
reading. Oh, my bad.
look. I mean, I kind of doubt that's true, but maybe it's true. It's certainly, I would say, a significant portion of Medicaid is people who are disabled or children or elderly, people who should not be, people who are not expected to work and still need health care, and I still think it's a net benefit to provide it to them. But I would just like an answer to this question: Do you believe that involuntary unemployment exists during a recession?
Me? Yeah, I
Yeah.
would just say during that action that there might be a chance where like jobs are very low. And with this, there's still going to be a lot of businesses that are actively looking to hire. When we look at recessions, which one would you say was our last recession?
Probably 2020, right? I mean,
Yep. What was one of the biggest job fields that in 2020 we're still actively looking to hire people?
presumably healthcare, but that's usually a pretty high skill.
Healthcare and at the same time construction or any type of blue collar or CDLs if you want to look at that one too.
Sure, but look, my point was just this. Obviously, like you conceded that there is such a thing as involuntary unemployment
There's
during a
there's
recession. For
still
one, I would still
actively
say,
jobs actively looking to hire, so there's no justified
okay,
means.
you conceded. Correct me if I'm wrong. That you do believe there is such a thing as involuntary unemployment during a recession.
Maybe in a blue once in a blue moon. But like
Once in a blue
generally,
moon.
yep,
Okay.
generally when it comes to a reception, there's still actively blue collar jobs that are looking to hire, and a lot of people do not want to do the blue collar jobs because I would just
Oh,
say
true.
that they feel like they're above it.
Okay, so we can see that
Right.
involuntary unemployment exists. But my question is, presumably, you wouldn't even think that if there was involuntary unemployment, we should be giving these people Medicaid anyway, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't have a causal
Right. So
obligation.
why is your like it seems kind of dumb for you to say, like, every single time we mention, like, the benefits Medicaid have, you're just like, oh well, people can just like get jobs if they need them, right? People
They
just
can
go
move
out and
up.
like get these jobs or whatever. When really your issue is like a much more like much more like fundamental, like, I just don't believe I should help other people, or the government should help other people because
Not with
it
my tax
needs
dollars.
to
I would
take my
just say,
money to do
yeah, I
so.
would just say that if anyone wants Medicaid, there should be a program where they would be able to like put themselves into the situation where they can agree with it and pay taxes. But when it comes to the general population, if people do not want Medicaid or do not agree with it, they should be able to opt out of this. I would advocate for more of a society like this.
I mean,
All right.
certainly, like, I would say I understand that there's obviously still arguments you can make that taxes are involuntary and everything, but we do live in a democracy. You do have the ability to, vote in these things and change that. But yeah,
I feel like we're kind of going in circles here. So
With
I just want to know, Fran, you keep saying that like Medicare, most of it is being paid to people with like disabilities, that are seniors that actually need it, right? And that is true. Would you acknowledge then that in this bill, those people are already still protected? Pregnant women, children, seniors, and people with disabilities.
That's to
I
you
mean, it's
guys.
their access to Medicaid is still protected, but it still does the things like cutting the funding for hospitals, reimbursement and stuff. So while they'll still be able to access Medicaid, they're going to end up long term end up traveling more to be able to access medical care, which a lot of
Okay.
those kind of people don't
right.
have a harder time traveling. So
All right, that's a
So I mean,
different
look,
criticism because my critique for these cuts would just be it seems largely performative in basis. It's $100 million out of what, a 1.2, $1.3 trillion program. It's just performative. I don't really think much is going to go on with it. They're just being like, oh, we are trying to fund it. Again, this goes back to my whole fiscal responsibility. They're trying to put the veneer on it. I don't really have much of a position.
I mean, look, again, the important thing to consider, like, work requirements do kick out, a fuck ton of people who are, eligible for Medicaid still. We have evidence of that from a bunch of different states who have done that. And then, like, there are other changes it makes as well. Like it repeals, like, some Biden era rules. Like, I think it makes, like the open enrollment, like, window a little, a little shorter. I think
changes
it
it to
also
6 months.
yeah, right. And I think it
Changes it to
also,
six
like,
months.
it has some, like, ACA, like, tax credit, like, repeals. So things like that as well are going to reduce, Medicaid benefits paid to people who, even shouldn't be working and things like that. And then obviously hospital closures as well would be a concern.
Yeah, so I can see those critiques. My problem is a lot of those come into like the administrative state just being highly inefficient here in the US because we still do a lot of things by like paperwork. When you go to other countries like Estonia, they have like apps on your phones that you can like get your driver's license, everything from. And so my critique, like to solve that problem, I think we're kind of gonna speak past each other because I have a different solution than what you guys would say.
I mean, look, I think the
I mean,
administrative state is not particularly efficient in the U.S. either. That's why I don't like that this bill increases it in like so many cases, in so many places, right? So like Medicaid work requirements is one example, and like SNAP work requirements, that is like increasing bureaucracy, increasing the administrative burden on the state. All these like random like tax deductions, like are not efficient. I think it adds like about 20 like random new tax deductions, some of which you can only get if you itemize your taxes, and like this puts a lot more strain on the IRS and everything, right? And like if you want to fix the tax system, you should move to a simpler tax system, and you can probably make it simpler while making it more progressive as well, even if you guys don't value progressivity as much.
Yeah, I would largely agree with that. But again, I think the solution that we're getting to is kind of a bit different. So bill doesn't really cover what my solution would be, so I guess we just kind of agree there. But the administrative state is kind of fucked.
The
Well,
administrative
I mean,
state is kind of fucked.
Yeah.
Let's hold on, gang, because look, I'm not gonna lie. This is you guys are just kind of autistically staring at each other, and it feels weird. If this was a first date, I would be like, this is going very poorly. I don't
Oh,
know
thank you.
what's going on
Thank
with
you.
the like connection here, or maybe it's just the flow, but it's man, I'm not getting laid after this day is what I'm saying, and I want to get laid. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to get some actual flowing conversation going. The administrative state. What is wrong with the administrative state? When you say the administrative state, what do you mean? Be specific. Please, go ahead.
Let's speak of the administrative state. I'm speaking of every single time you kind of have to interact with the government. Like, what are you doing? All the forms you have to fill out. Nothing is kind of like streamlined. When you go to other countries, last country I was in was Estonia. Girl I was talking to there was like, oh yeah, I can go get my driver's license renewed on this app. I can go do this on this app. Like everything is just kind of centralized and streamlined in the whole entire process. In the US, if you want to interact with the state, it's like, oh, I need to get my driver's license. I gotta go to the DMV. I need to get this. I need to go over here. I'm trying to get this license. I need to go over here. It's just all kind of fraction, and with the technology we have, we should kind of be able to centralize it. It's my only complaint to it.
Yeah, I mean, not to mention the fact that we're one of the only countries that you like actually have to file a tax return, which is actually retarded because the government already knows how much we owe in taxes and can just tell us instead of us having to file a fucking tax return.
Right. I mean, I think, usually when I say administrative state, I just think of like the administrative burden of doing things, whether it be like filing your taxes or filing for government benefits. Right. I think usually these things are like typically inefficient. I think means testing in general, like does not seem to have particularly great outcomes, and it doesn't achieve what it wants to achieve. And then I think, like I said, I think you should move to a much simpler tax code where we don't have a bunch of, random deductions, where we don't have a bunch of letting you depreciate some assets over 5-year periods, and we should have switched to a much simpler type of consumption tax.
I just, okay, my God. Let's talk about. Let's try this. Let's talk.
Okay, big topic we all agreed on.
I know.
Yeah.
Hold on.
We all agree.
I understand.
Tax is bad.
What are our thoughts
you
here?
got one of the points.
Hold on.
We all agree tax is bad.
One of the things that happened.
I like taxes.
Well, fair enough. One of the things that happened during the run-up to the bill is Marjorie Taylor Greene, Thomas Massey, a bunch of others actually came out publicly and condemned a lot of what was in the bill. For example, there was restrictions on AIs and stuff initially, or lack of restrictions on AIs or something, right? That a lot of people found surprising that were in the bill. Why is it that Republicans who were very against this bill decided to cave in and suddenly support it? Are we being served? Are our best interests being served by the people in Congress? Why or why not? And Democrats, to the Democrat side, what more, if anything, could Democrats have done to prevent this bill from being passed, and why didn't they do it? Go ahead, please. My God, someone! Jesus Christ! Okay, all of you suck. Go ahead.
Well, I like to try to let other people speak first. So on the topic of what the Democrats could have done, there's really not much they could have done to prevent it, but there's a lot they could have done to kind of change it. So the vote to pass it was really close, and it's kind of like you have to choose between bad or worse. And so a Democrat could have came forward and said, yeah, I really dislike these certain policies here. I'll vote for the bill, but you have to get rid of like this one thing or change this thing up. And that would have been an avenue for them to try to like, we don't need to worry about Ron Paul. We don't need to worry about this guy. No Democrats really did that. They're all holding firm on the line saying we're not going to do it, even though they could technically get maybe a slightly worse version in their eyes of the bill, but none of them want to do that.
Yeah,
I mean, look, I don't know what the Democrats should have done, but I don't think that there's any version of this bill that is going to be remotely palatable to Democrats, and I don't believe Democrats should be going to vote for a bill that cuts Medicaid or anything.
So what about the Republicans?
Yeah, I would just
right?
say with the tax deficit, when we look at Democrats, typically they want to impose a higher tax deficit. We can look under Biden. We can look at most Democrat presidents in like the last 20 years plus. Typically, when it comes to the tax deficit that they agreed with, I would just say that one of the biggest things that I disagreed with is going to be the action of the tax deficit, which most of the Democrats kind of agreed with. If you want to,
I mean, I think there's, I don't have it like stats on this in hand, but I think there's like mixed evidence as for which party causes bigger deficits. I mean, certainly I would say, it seems plausible that Democrats probably want more government spending, but they also want a lot more taxes, right? So, obviously both Biden and Trump, obviously, had a COVID era stimulus that kind of distorted numbers as well. But there were periods under Biden where the, deficit was decreasing. Now you can say that's because of the end of COVID era benefits, but I mean, still, we had a budget surplus under Clinton, obviously. Obama had to deal with 2008, and I think that
Yeah, to
bailout
go back like
was
25 years.
right. Well, I mean, we
And then we could also talk about how the fucking Republicans just held up when the initial vote happened. The bill was going to fail, and then there were like 17 different fucking Republican holdouts, and then the Speaker of the House just fucking held the vote open infinitely so that they could pressure the Republicans into fucking passing the bill that didn't want to pass the bill in the first place because it would have failed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure some of the last votes were Republican. If I'm not mistaken, it was like Kentucky or Louisiana, where he was like, yeah, he didn't agree with the tax deficit. Because when it comes to conservatives, typically they want like the lower tax deficit. Yes, more spending on the military, but cut the other programs, which I agree with.
Hold on? Why does it matter? Why does the deficit matter? Why does the debt matter at the end of the day?
Yeah, because when it comes to Congress, every single time that they put their hand into the cookie jar, when we give them 10 cents, they spend $1. So instead of them actually finding out what programs that they should fund, they try doing everything across the board instead of prioritizing which ones are more important than the others.
I mean, I don't know if that's an answer to why the deficit matters.
Right,
I mean,
so-
the thing I'll say, like, I don't think the deficit is like the biggest concern in the world or anything. But again, like, I think that this is a rather large deficit increase over the course of 10 years. It's like at least 3 trillion, probably closer to 5 trillion, right? And that's at a time when our outstanding debt is already very.
So what?
So you're probably going to see interest rates
increase. So what?
Yeah, so you're probably going to see interest rate increase. You're probably going to see more inflation as well. You might see lower growth because of the interest rate increases, and then obviously in the future we might have to raise taxes to try to undo what we did now. And then obviously in the future, if we have a recession or something and we want to do government stimulus, it's going to be we're not going to have as much fiscal space to do another bank bailout or do another American Rescue Plan because of how much we're spending now when we don't have to.
All right, so the big problem with the debt, in my opinion, is that the government only really has 3 ways to get money. They can tax it, they can borrow it, and they can print it. Each one of these has drawbacks that are going to be pretty big. And as the debt grows, you're going to have, so like if they decide to just print money because they need to fund this stuff, that's just going to increase inflation. If they raise taxes, you can raise taxes up to a certain point if you agree with the Laffer curve before things just start dropping off and start hindering economic growth. And if you borrow it, borrowing is probably, I would argue, is kind of like the worst of the 3 options. I don't really mind inflation that much. I hold a lot of assets, but borrowing it's added onto your fiscal spending that you have to do every year. It's kind of mandatory spending, and it eats away at anything else you can put at it. Like we spend like $1 trillion on the debt this year. That $1 trillion could go to help out a lot of other people. If you're a progressive, if you are a big hawkish guy, it could go towards the military to be like, we are going to uphold international order. If you're a big borders guy, it could go to the border. There's so many different things it could do. But instead, we're just paying interest on it.
I mean, there are positive
look,
ways that we could raise taxes. I mean, we could
Right,
raise the top marginal tax rate, we could improve the capital gains taxes, things like that. There are plenty of positive ways that we could increase taxes.
Right. I think the U.S. clearly has quite a bit of room to raise taxes if we wanted to. Like, we're definitely not on the wrong side of the Laffer curve on even things like the capital gains tax. But I also think that, like, you could probably move to some type of progressive consumption tax, to some type of resource rent taxes as well, and probably raise as much, if not more, in taxes than we do now, while also, having favorability towards investment and saving still. Well, actually more than we do now because we tax that.
What would you think?
Literally just tax
rate we could
legalize.
have?
What?
I mean, one thing that we could do to raise a bunch of taxes is just tax legalize and regulate marijuana. I mean, we state how much that is produced in taxes in states like Ohio, states like Colorado, states like California, etc.
All right. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, but towards the last curve, like, where do you think where do you think the tip of the Laffer curve would be at, like 35% tax burden, 50% tax burden? Like, where do you think it would roughly be at?
For what type of tax?
I'm gonna shove that tip of the
Whatever one you
laugher
kind of want to
curve
like
right into my
initialize.
eye.
Like overall, like if we're
I
taxing,
think if you did a progressive personal expenditures tax, I think like the top rate on that could probably be above 50%. At very high brackets. I think on capital gains tax, which I don't particularly like the capital gains tax. It would be less, but even then, I think you could probably still raise more revenue from increasing the capital gains tax. I don't know exactly what it's at right now, but it can probably go to about 33, maybe more, without decreasing revenue.
$20 from Alexander Rin. At least I'm making a little money today. Thank God. Maybe I'll get I don't know, buy some bullets or something. I don't know. Bunch of weak-willed toddlers on here. Even after saying most people who lost their Medicare were people who couldn't fill out the forms right, Mr. Duty said, was success removing people who didn't belong? What does that even mean at the end there, Alexander Rin? I don't know.
or was it successful that Medicare removed people that didn't belong? People didn't belong, yeah, get the hell off of it. Like, I don't agree with it.
I guess like
That seems like
let's
a question.
look at SNAP.
Everybody would agree. If somebody was abusing Medicare, would you want them off of it?
Hold on. Let's narrow this down to SNAP, right? We haven't talked about SNAP benefits and things like that. Is everyone familiar what SNAP is?
Yes.
Yeah, it's the
Okay. Nonfon, I trust you to give a good short definition of SNAP, or at least understanding of SNAP. So could you tell the audience what SNAP is?
Yeah,
it's
essentially just a program that it's a means tested program where we give essentially vouchers to people, for mostly poor people and people with children, to buy food for their families.
Why, to those of you who are supporting this big beautiful bill, right? Why do you support the cuts that it is making to SNAP benefits?
We're using the money in other locations. One of the best cases is going to be us using it in the military or cutting this program to a very fine line. When people abuse our social programs, we can look at Medicaid, everything like this. There are people that are going to abuse this, and I would rather not have as many people that abuse SNAP. Yes, typically it's a small percentage, but even with this having a more hard line when it comes to people trying to use social programs, they would just have to be able to prove this to a better case.
It's so look, one, I mean, obviously, there are, I would say, there are probably, I don't know the exact percentage, but a very, very small percentage of people probably abuse SNAP benefits, right? And in exchange, we get a bunch of families who are able to feed their children. That seems like it's probably overall a good thing. And you maybe could have an argument for cutting SNAP if it wasn't in a bill that also cut a bunch of other taxes. It also is going to raise interest rates so much that the cost of servicing the debt is probably going to exceed the money saved from SNAP.
We have a lot of fat people in the U.S. I don't know, cutting food benefits, it's probably good for them to go on a diet. Probably my controversial take.
Wow. I mean,
Fuck those kids,
I don't have a ton of
starve.
Yeah, I don't have a ton of research on SNAP.
A childhood obesity epidemic. All right, those kids need to be running.
I mean, I don't have a ton of evidence on SNAP specifically, but it seems like, to whatever extent we think that it increases obesity, we should probably just be taxing the things that we think are increasing obesity. So, and that'll actually decrease obesity for everyone, not just people.
Food increases obesity. You eat too much, it's too many calories. What do you mean?
So one of the things that
food?
Well, I'm probably for taxing sugar and maybe corn syrup. At least ending the subsidies to corn farmers that we give.
So one of the things that this bill does for SNAP is actually change it to where it no longer determines the amount of benefits that people get from food stamps by looking at food prices. So it's no longer going to look at how much healthy food costs and stuff like that, and instead it ties the current amount that people get for being a 4-person family, which is $975, and just ties that into inflation instead of actually looking at the cost of food.
Wait, $950 is enough to feed a family of 4. Do you disagree with this?
Kind of.
I actually don't know.
It's So there's more to it than that. Like I'm talking like the max amount that you can get is the $975, which you're correct. Like right now, it should be enough to like buy groceries and stuff like that. But what this does is, so the way that it worked before is they would look at like the cost of food and stuff like that, in order to determine how much people are going to get. What this bill does is change it to where that is no longer the case, and it just ties that $975 to inflation instead. Food prices, because of price gouging, aren't always going up with inflation. A lot of the times, food prices can go up and down based off of just general supply and demand. So it doesn't take into account how much food actually costs anymore, which is not a good thing.
I kind of disagree with the price gouging on food. We're in a largely free market on our food stuffs here in the U.S. It gets largely subsidized. I mean, if somebody's selling food for too expensive, someone's just going to come in and undercut them. Happens all the time. But I kind of want to get more specific here. So on the cuts to SNAP, are you guys all like familiar with them? Because I just brought them up. I had them in my documents here. I understand you all are against like the work requirements, so we're not going to go over that again. But what about the state cost sharing for high error states? What do you think of that?
Well, that was only added because of the senator from Alaska wanted to avoid the SNAP cuts, right? I don't support that, but that was added because the what's her name, like Lisa Murkowski said, I don't want SNAP cuts to affect my citizens, and I guess Alaska has a higher error rate than most other states when it comes to SNAP benefits, so we're going to grant an exemption for this for states with high error rates so that my constituents can keep their SNAP benefits. I think that's fucking insane. Fucking insane. I think she's weak for doing that. I think that's a horrible thing. Yeah.
All right, so we agree on that. If you're gonna make cuts, just make it up broadly. All right. What about the frequent eligibility retirement? I can't fucking speak. Basically, they have to like they'll constantly check in to make sure you need to use it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just think that the evidence does not show that like most of this means testing is like at all effective. Like, I think in my ideal world, and a lot of libertarians, by the way, agree with this. You might not, but like, we would just switch from a lot of these programs that have super high administrative burdens that give in-kind benefits to just some type of cash transfer program, because it's just not very efficient for the government to be trying to track constantly how much SNAP benefits you need and administer exactly as much as you need and make sure that you fill out these 50 forms, and we have to pay 10 bureaucrats to track you and spy on you all the time, right? Like it'd probably just be much more efficient to just have some type of negative income tax that do these programs.
Oh, perfect! You're a big negative income tax enjoyer as well. I fucking love that. Don't meet many of those people around.
But then shouldn't you be against this bill for increasing all the things that make a negative income tax preferable to these in-kind programs, right? Like,
not really. I would prefer a negative income tax to all these programs. So you make these programs like way harder to get into. Like logically speaking, a lot of people are gonna get so frustrated. They're just like, hey, let's just get the negative income tax, because even though
I mean, you're saying that
may not
we
prefer
think
it,
that
we'll go this way.
I think it's unlikely that, politically people are going to say, oh, I'd so much rather have a negative income tax because I have to deal with like the increased administrative burdens from, from this bill or whatever. I think it's a better argument I think if you are in favor of negative income tax, partially because of the administrative burden, then you should be against the fact that this bill increases the administrative burden. I don't see this need for like an accelerationist argument for trying to get negative income taxes. Like, that seems silly to me.
Okay.
Okay, great response. We love it. Here we are talking, and I don't know exactly right where we're going, but I just the idea. Let's bring this back into general concepts. Maybe we'll get some traction going here, right? The general concept: does the government have a responsibility to its citizens to provide for its basic needs? Why or why not? Go ahead.
Let's
hear Loki first. Loki first, and then we'll.
Yeah, so basic needs for me is going to be being able to protect private property. So police department, military, I would have like the smallest like government. And when it comes to like the situations of like a lot of social programs, I do not agree. happiness. Okay, this is going to be subjective. This is upon them. If they want these types of like benefits or anything like this, they can be able to have this on like a small form with local communities or anything like this. It does not have to be from little Timmy that is 22 years old from Florida that is actively paying for someone else that is in California. Is bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, my
Yeah, so I,
argument would be very, very simple. Like, I don't have like the same type of autonomy concerns that you might have. I think, the government should concern itself with doing programs that are a net benefit for citizens. And I think most welfare programs end up being a net benefit to government citizens.
Wait,
So
so
they
if you're
should
saying a net
probably do
like
them.
a social program, okay, let's go with a hypothetical. Let's just say that this government in this hypothetical wants to be able to like do one like horrible act to 1% of the population. The rest of the population is going to be okay by this action. Would you say that this program would be good?
I mean, obviously, if we're just like, presupposing like, oh, government, if we're doing basically a utility monster like reductio with government programs, like I could like bite that bullet, like whatever.
Okay,
But
so
like,
would it be okay if
welfare
it comes to
programs just
slavery?
don't seem to have these type of
Wait,
effects. No,
wait,
I don't think slavery
wait, no,
maximizes
not fun.
well-being. But
Wait,
look,
wait,
like
wait, no,
you have
not
these
fun.
same
It's a
type of.
hypothetical. Wait, it's a hypothetical. So let's just say that you have to, like 1% of your population is going to have to be a slave, and then 99% of the population is going to have the happiest life of their, well, like ever. They're going to not have to work. They have medical, everything, but 1% of your population has to be slave. Would you bite this bullet?
So, I mean, if you literally just presuppose that it is an overall net utility gain, then like, sure, whatever. But I would say, like, obviously,
Okay,
it's
so you're
very
okay with slavery
unlikely
in this
because of
situation.
the. So true, buddy. But I would say, obviously, because I view slavery, like, generally speaking, as like such a, net utility negative, not just because of the suffering imposed on slaves, but also because I do believe there is value in society from developing heuristics such as, like, oh, it is good to respect someone else's personal autonomy, right? I believe that's a good heuristic to have.
Wait,
So
is it
because
good
of
to
those reasons, I would say
enforce?
like it is like incredibly like unlikely that
Wait, is it good to
obviously in any
enforce
real world.
upon someone when it comes to actions like when it comes to like Medicaid? If they are not using Medicaid and they're still getting taxed for this, being able to pay for someone else, this is going to be the forced action. When it comes to slavery, this is going to be synonymous because you're actively forcing someone to do something that they do not agree with. So in this case, you're
But
okay and you're justifying as slavery.
True, buddy. So again, if I could
Define
just finish
slavery.
my sentence here, right? So because I view slavery as having all these negatives associated with it, you'd have to have like an insane amount of like utility gain from doing slavery in order to justify that. And I would say it is incredibly unlikely that any like utility gain from slavery is going to be worth imposing a cost on slave. And again, I do think it is valuable just to develop rules, to develop heuristics that society operates off of. And I do believe, something like the Constitution that protects those type of rights is a net benefit. For society overall, but look again, I think you have like the the same type of reductios on the other side, where if you're saying like what I value most is like I don't believe you can infringe on my property or whatever. It's like okay, well I'm sure you've heard it before. Like what if we have like a baby in the middle of someone's lawn and the baby's gonna starve to death unless you go
Yeah, they
trespass
don't
on
have a
their
causal
lawn.
obligation. Yeah, you don't have a causal
So wait,
obligation.
you
And
would
when
agree that
Yep.
you should kill that baby. You should
Yeah, I
not
would have no
trespass
problem
to
with this.
feed the
You do
baby.
not wait, when it comes to like the random kid, you do not have a causal obligation if they're on someone else's private
Not, no,
property.
no, no. Would it
It's
be
gonna Yep,
wrong to do?
it
Would
would
it be
be
wrong
wrong to
to do it?
infringe upon someone
It would
else's
be
native
wrong to
rights
do
to
it.
their private property. Yep.
That's great. Okay. Do you also agree? Like, I'm sure you've heard this hypothetical before too, where it's like, oh, you're invited into your friend's building on like the 8th store, and you fall off the balcony, and you grab onto a flagpole while you're falling down, and then so the person who owns that flagpole comes around and says, "Hey, that's my property. You can't trespass." Do you have to let go of that flagpole?
Yeah, I would just say you don't have a causal obligation when it comes to the action of infringing upon someone else's negative rights. They didn't cause you to be in the state of dependence. I would just say that your friend did, so they have like the moral obligation to make sure that you are taken care of when they are at your house. And if it's your negligence where this action takes place, that's
Hold on.
upon
None of
you.
none of that stuff is relevant. My question is, you are on
Wait, it
someone's
is.
flagpole.
Wait, hold up a second. You said you went over to your friend's house. So with the action of this is going to be a verbal agreement between two people. So his obligation
Right.
is
So
to
I'm
make
saying
sure
you
that
have
there's no
consent to
harm.
go into your
Yep. So
neighbor's
there's
house, right?
so
You're
it's
not
going to be a
trespassing their property. You
Yep.
fall off of their balcony,
Yep.
grab onto a flagpole. Someone else owns, right? Someone else owns
Was
this
it your
flagpole.
negligence or
And
was it his negligence?
once you catch on, It was an act. What do you mean? It was an act. It was an
No, wait,
accident.
wait. If it's
What do you
a
mean by negligence? It was
negligence, wait, if it's gonna be like you're like standing too close to the edge, or you hanging on to like let's just say like the balcony, or being so close to the balcony, then at that point it's your negligence. You do not have the rights to
I
infringe
don't
upon
believe it's
someone
relevant.
else.
I don't believe it's relevant either way. No,
It
regardless if
is.
it's your negligence or someone else's negligence. If
There
you are
was okay.
holding
You're
onto
on
the
the balcony.
flagpole
There's a
after,
sudden earthquake. It's no one's fault, not your own, not anyone's. You fall off the balcony. You're
Wait, that's
falling.
God's
Grab a
command.
flagpole to save yourself. The guy looks out the
Yeah.
window and says, "You're on my property. Get the fuck off."
Yep.
Do you have the duty to let go or no?
Yeah, you have the duty to let go. You're infringing upon someone else's negative rights to their private property.
right? I mean, this seems like obviously a pretty insane reductio versus
They
like
didn't
my
cause you to
reductio is
wait.
just
They
like
didn't cause you to be in a state of dependence. With my reductio, I wouldn't be justifying slavery in any case because with the situation at hand, they didn't cause you to be in a state of dependence, or at the same time, you cannot inherently infringe upon someone else's negative rights. In certain cases, for your reductio, you're okay with slavery. I find that repulsive.
I mean, I find it repulsive that like you would say it's not okay to go help a baby that is
Yeah,
starving
would you say
starving someone else's land.
slavery?
And again, like
Alright,
I don't know if you like heard
Alright,
me like hold on. I don't know if like you heard me say we're like I think it is good to develop heuristics and general rules for society. So like obviously I'm okay with developing a general rule that says we can't infringe on someone else's like personal autonomy. I just think that like obviously that's not a like sort of intrinsically valuable thing.
Okay,
Wait, it's not
here,
intrinsically
$10
valuable.
because I gotta make some goddamn money here. Alexander Wren, thank you for the $10. Says, can you just ban anyone who uses the term causal obligation if your entire moral structure falls to causal obligation in the NAP, the non-aggression pact for principle, if you will. For those of you who don't know, says you don't have anything to say worth being heard. We aren't going to ban anyone from this panel unless you give me obscene amounts of money, which I don't think you're prepared to do. That said,
Wait, how much money
Oh,
would they have?
you're worth money? How much?
that said, tell you what, guys, tell you what we're gonna do. Tell you what we're gonna do. Okay, because
Well, I just have a
go ahead,
question to get
board
back
cow.
on
Let's see. Let's
Yeah,
see if
alright.
you can say this. Go ahead.
You said, do you say it's of the responsibility to provide aid to their citizens? I would argue no. And a lot of times that you do provide aid to certain countries, you can see this in the foreign aid paradox, for example, where if you give money or goods to a different country, as in terms of helping them, you oftentimes just distort their markets and cause like drastic unemployment. So you have like the tailors over in like Africa, they get flooded with a bunch of shirts and pants and shoes, and all of them just start going out of business, and it just ends up harming their economy a bit more. You got a response to it?
I think like oh, sorry. Like I don't deny like theoretically these things like can happen. I would just stress like I probably disagree with to the extent to which we see them, but like in that case like these programs just would not be very beneficial, and we should just not do them.
Yeah, I would think the free market would probably have a better solution to it. You probably disagree with that.
Yeah, but you're hypothetical. You're also talking about foreign aid. We're talking about aid that goes to the actual citizens of said country. So in our case, things like Medicaid or the college grants, SNAP, things like that. I mean, those types of things, the things that actually go to the citizens of your country, are a net positive because they help people to be able to continue to contribute to society. Whereas what you were talking about was foreign aid, which is different.
I guess they're really two different in comparisons here. And the reason why I did go to foreign aid is that it's really hard to tell with like benefits that I hear about like what was the results before, what were the results after, what's like the dream scenario. Like there's a whole bunch of speculation, and every single study I've kind of read on it, it seems inconclusive. Some are just like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. This is like the worst thing ever. When you look at foreign aid, you can literally see like what happens when the foreign aid starts, what happens when it stops, because a lot of times it doesn't go on forever. And, like what are the results?
Yeah, I mean, foreign aid in general is for the most part a good thing. We could look at how we helped Ukraine be able to defend themselves, and then you could look at like natural disaster relief. But as you said, it doesn't go on forever, and then a lot of the times they're kind of stuck trying to fix shit themselves. I mean, look at Haiti.
Okay.
So if we start doing like foreign aid, so should we continue doing this or cut them off at some point? Because if we do our foreign aid into another country, we could flood their markets and then at that point affect their economy.
In my opinion, I would say that we should cut it off at some point. I mean, it's just like
But
the
even when
fucking
we
war.
flood their market with our like medical or our technology, this is typically going to devalue or at the same time affect their market. Do you disagree with this?
Not necessarily. I mean, us giving them foreign aid is obviously going to put money into their economy that they're going to rely on to a
No, it's
degree.
going to affect their jobs because when it comes to like if I'm able to flood your market with insulin cheaper than you're able to produce this, is this a good thing?
I generally speaking, I would say yes,
Okay, so then
considering
if we go to
it's something that
war,
helps.
if we go to war with each other, then at that point that you aren't like relying on my insulin since I can like cut your cost, everything like this, and then you stop producing it, or like this should say that you minimize like your factories to like having 4 factories. Beforehand, you had 12 factories. With me doing this, where I'm able to flood your market and be able to devalue your products, at that point, I'm going to say that this is very bad because then at this point you're going to be losing jobs for your civilians, and at the same time, if there is an action that takes place where you go to war with me, then at that point your civilians are going to die.
I mean, yeah, you're not wrong there. I mean, I can't disagree with that.
You could. But that
So
said,
then why should we do foreign aid?
There are more.
I mean, I don't know why we're discussing 4-day, buddy, but you know, we can set up
Yeah,
a
foreign aid isn't
conversation
even
another
relevant to the
time.
conversation.
I mean, maybe people would actually talk about that subject, and we wouldn't go in
Well-
circles. I don't know.
Well, I
Well,
mean,
we were talking about the
here,
reference to like, do you have an obligation? And so the action of like, hey, do these things cause downstream negative effects that you can't always see? How do we react to that? What's the proper way of doing things? Big thing Loki is hitting on is the dependency argument. That people then get dependent on this. So for citizens in the U.S., you get dependent on
On
like
these
the free
programs.
healthcare you get dependent on these welfare programs. It's like, well, if I get a job, is the job if I work 40 hours a week, the benefits I'm getting pay me, let's make the math simple here, $50,000 a year, which is way over what it is. But if I get a job, the job only pays $60,000. Is working
Right,
10
right.
hours, is working 40 hours a week worth $10,000? And they're like, no,
You know,
I'd rather stay home for those hours.
So 2 things. I mean, one, I think conceptually, like, welfare cliffs can be a problem, and I think that there are ways the U.S. should address welfare cliffs. This bill does not do that at all. It just takes benefits away from a lot of people who need them, obviously. 2, if we're concerned about, again, how much money we're spending, again, it's in the same bill. It's a whole bunch of these fucking tax cuts, which are going to increase the deficit a ton, and that's going to increase interest rates as well. I think it's like estimated, like it's like $600 billion, like increase in interest cost over the next 10 years or whatever. That's probably, I think that's more than like the SNAP cuts are estimated to be. I think that's more than the Medicaid cuts are estimated to be as well. So I don't think there's any argument there that this bill is actually net benefit in that case. And again, like I mentioned earlier, to some sense I agree with you on these things, which is why we should be doing like a negative income tax. But like, this bill does not. I don't think it moves in the right direction in that sense. I think it adds a lot of administrative complexity to these things.
Wait, when you say like a negative income tax, like what percentage would you say that it would have to be?
I don't have a strong opinion on that. I have to do more reading. I don't know.
Okay,
I mean,
so
like,
when it comes to like, wait, when it comes to our administration as it is right now versus how it ought to be, yeah, I would just say that it's the administration to be able to stop like or very minimize like the people that are actively relying on this instead of them going out and doing other actions to be able to get off of these programs. Do you disagree with this?
repeat that. Sorry. You
Okay,
think
so
the
when it
state has
comes
an
to our
obligation to?
so when it comes to our administration, how it is now, how is it set up now? That we have administration where they are actively getting paid to do this act. Yeah, how it ought to be is going to be a whole different case. But with the act being it is now, it is going to be minimizing like the people that are relying on this and trying to push them off of this into finding like better jobs. When it comes to like WIC or other programs, they are trying to minimize people that are relying on this by helping them out in other ways. You disagree?
No, again, I do disagree. Obviously, again, I don't think most of the people that are going to be kicked off Medicaid or SNAP are these, able-bodied working people that are going to be
Wait,
able
you
to
made
like
a
easily
positive claim
find.
about this. I've given you one source, and when it came to your source, this is two contradicting evidence. When I look at my source, it's going to be
Those are
like
looking
the very
at those are looking at Loki. Those are looking at two different surveys. Both those articles are by Matt Brunegg. One of them is looking at
Yep.
a current population survey. The other one is looking at, I think it's called like the SIP survey. It's not like at all uncommon for surveys to be marginally different. But if you look at both of those surveys, in both cases, in one survey it's 5% of workers, in the other survey or Medicare recipients, in the other case it's 3% of Medicare recipients, right? So this is not like a a large
Okay,
difference
so
here,
when it comes
especially
to
when
like
we're.
students, one of the biggest actions inside of this, why can't they work and do school at the same time? Like if we're looking at your studies that
I
you
mean,
posted, when it comes to like these students, they are actively reliant on Medicaid instead of them working and doing school.
I think there is evidence. I don't have these on hand, but like that school
Wait, so you've
performance,
been making positive
does.
claims. So when it comes to like the action of
You
like
understand?
these students,
I'm making the positive claim that from the stuff I've seen in the past, which I don't have on hand currently, and
so
it
don't
just
make positive
intuitively
claims
seems like
like
it
this.
would be the case that school performance a lot of times does go down the more you work, right? I think students like, I don't see why we need to expect the majority of students to
Wait,
be
why should we not
working as
expect?
well. I think
Wait, because even with them going to school, taking
because
on
they're
the
focusing on
necessary.
getting their education, right?
Okay, cool. So even with them going to school and focusing on their education, it's their own opinion to go into the schooling or be able to do this action. We do not have like, we should not be required to pay for their medical when it comes to this action. When it comes to them being reliant on Medicaid or being able to be reliant on all these social programs where they are actively able to work, when it comes to like most schools or when it comes to like the students, are you able to sit here and say that most of them are like not able bodies?
Most of the students are not able-bodied. I mean, I'm sure
Yeah.
most students are. I'm sure it's likely that most students, or actually, I don't know, because not all students are on Medicaid, right? So it could actually be the case that that the majority of students on Medicaid are not able-bodied. I don't actually know for sure.
Wait, why are
But
Wait, why would they not be
So
able-bodied if they're actively going to school to
because
be able to do like
people with like disability are probably more likely to be on Medicaid, right? So like, if,
it doesn't necessarily matter whether they're able to embodied or not, though, because the whole point of like allowing access for students for these programs is to promote upward mobility. Do you not support people being able to be upwardly mobile?
yeah, if we're talking like upper mobile, is this going to be like the people that aren't able to move around by themselves, or is this going to be the more of the action where they're reliant on other people to be able to help them out do stuff?
I think he
Well,
was talking about more like
well,
when I'm talking,
either way, you can still have a positive upward mobile effect,
Okay.
right? Like I don't.
Wait, even with
$100,
a
$100 from Alexander Rin. End this. Okay? This is the end, folks. We're going to find a better topic. And you can stay for this if you want, but let's wrap
abortion,
this up. We're going to give you guys closing statements, right? Final thoughts on the big, beautiful, big bastard of a bill, whatever you want to call it. Why you support it, why you don't. And then we're going to talk about, oh my God, anything else, okay?
abortion,
Anything
abortion.
else. Well, I have some ideas, actually, that might be more interesting. You're free to stay if you'd like, unless you get boring, then I'll kick you. But it's up to you,
Fair.
right? But first, since I did book you for a topic, a specific topic, I do want to give you a chance to give your closing statements and tell people where they can find you. I have links to all your stuffs, that anyone who's given me a link at least. I have a link to your shows or your Twitters or whatever. It's in my YouTube description. People can go and click on that and give you a follow, give you a subscribe, whatever, right? So we're going to give it first to, we're going to let Loki have the last word. So we're going to give first to Nonfon, then we're just going to kind of go up and down, up and down. Nonfon, final thoughts on this, please.
Yeah, I mean, like I said at the beginning, again, no matter like what type of person you are, you should probably be opposed to this bill. Even if you are, like a libertarian that just like really fucking hates welfare spending so much, right? Like you got to consider, because of how much we're increasing deficit with this bill, the interest rate costs are probably going to be roughly equivalent or probably likely higher than any savings that we make from Medicaid or SNAP or whatever. And obviously, I think if you're a progressive and like these programs, you should be opposed to it because it cuts these programs while at the same time cutting a lot of taxes that probably disproportionately benefit rich people, right? While at the same time, poor people are also getting slammed by tariffs as well. Again, increasing deficit of 1 ton at a time where it is dangerous to do that. that at a time where our economy is growing, where we should not be doing that at a time where the demand for bonds is going down because there's so much uncertainty, mostly because of the tariffs. Horrible, horrible, horrible bill. I don't think you heard much of a good defense for it here today. Yeah, it sucks.
Well, that's true, but thank you for being here, and gang, check him out. You can find him on Nonfon 420 and Twitch, and I think on Twitter that's his name as well. So check him out, give him a follow, etc. BoredCows, please.
All right. So to start off, the first thing I brought up was the fiscal deficit. Everyone here agreed that that was a concern. However, the opposing party made no attempts to actually come to like a reasonable conclusion on how to actually solve the problem. They just said this bill just exacerbates it. Well, you can just point to every other administration for the past 20 years that all just carried on the problem, kicking the can down the road. You just blame this bill as the sole problem of the deficit. Kind of hard to do.
Okay, well, where can people find you if they want to find you?
No, I don't have anything.
He has nothing, gang, but thank you for being here anyway. I do appreciate your time, sir. Vigilante, please.
You can find me at the Vigilante TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. So, I mean, like we've said, this bill cuts a fuckload for Medicaid as well as SNAP. I mean, these are important programs to allow people to be able to actually support their families and get health care. The Medicaid cuts also are going to kill hospitals across the country because it's going to put the burden on the hospitals in order to pay for people that don't have insurance. It also just throws a fuckload of money towards ICE, which is actually stupid. You don't really need a total of like $100 billion going towards ICE. Immigration isn't that much of a problem for us to need that much money going towards ICE of all things. And then it also gets rid of a bunch of clean energy incentives, which is we need clean air. We need fossil fuels aren't going to last forever. We need to start phasing towards, even if you don't care about the environment, and regardless need to start phasing towards wind, solar, hydrogen, and stuff, because eventually oil, gas, and coal are going to run out anyways. So.
Wait, and where in the bill does it say that it doesn't like prioritize this?
I mean, there is an entire section in the bill that gets rid of the different incentivizations that were created by the Inflation Reduction Act. There's also later on in the bill, there's more cuts in there. I can give you the exact pages. It's going to take
When
me
it
a second
comes
to
to
find
the
it though.
situation of Texas,
This is
would
closing
you say that
statements. Hold on,
Closing
right?
statement.
Let him. You get yours next. I promise, right? But let Vigilante finish up, help you, and then
Yep.
we're gonna get to you. Okay, go ahead. Finish your thought, Vigilante, please.
So to answer your question, it's specifically based on my quick search of the bill. It's in Title 6 of the bill is where it cuts all of the different
Beautiful.
tax reliefs and stuff.
Okay. Thank you for being here, Vigilante. I appreciate you. Go check him out, gang. He gave you his Twitch and stuff and his Twitter. I put it in my YouTube description. You can click it out and give him some love. Thank you for being here. Finally, last but not least, Loki, please go ahead.
Okay, so when it came to the situation of ICE, I have given my source. I would recommend everyone looking at this. When it comes to us funding asylum seekers or people that are actively coming over the border, they do not pay typically income tax and property tax, one of the biggest taxes for the IRS. And on top of that, when it came to the argument of like the green energy, everything like this, yeah, look at Texas. They don't regulate when it comes to like solar energy or like better energy that they typically go with, and they still have more solar panels and at the same time wind turbines than California. I would just say that when we like completely go against this, it's very simple. Texas read about their rules when it is the legislative where you're able to do solar energy and other things, no problem.
Okay.
It's not upon the like government to make this take place. It's on the private businesses. And when it comes to medical, hospitals are private. When it comes to them taking health insurance or taking unnecessary debt upon themselves, they already do this now. If they don't want to take a certain type of insurance, I have no problem with this.
Okay, well, where could people find you?
Twitch, DMI.
Check them out, gang. Thank you for being here. With that, we're going to close out this segment, but we're not ending the stream because I want to do something else. And you guys are welcome to stay, but you don't have to. I'll release you. I'm not Hamas. I'm not going to hold you hostage. First of all, $5 from Krieger. I'm going to go with Krieger. It says, did Loki talk about how a baby's life is worth less than a paperclip and how he wouldn't save somebody's life if he had the chance? We had a wonderful discussion with Loki the other day, last week, about this. I am well aware of Loki's stances on this. It's not a secret, I suppose, or a surprise. But I don't want to talk about that specifically right now. I want to, and I'm going to share this on screen, right, so you can all see. Recently, Destiny was on a Piers Morgan panel, and it was pretty interesting, I felt. They had a clip of a recent tweet he made, and there's been a lot of response to that. I've made a take. A lot of people are mad at my take about this, and I want to discuss it a little bit because I think it does actually matter to the state of play, right? It matters how we message. It matters how we go forward. It matters how we do these things. So I'm going to share this clip on screen. You can click on it if you like. Here we go. Bloop. Bloop. And I'll make it large so people can actually see and read and all that shit, okay? So let's see what he has to say. Okay, gang?
Question, Destiny.
President there, but...
Destiny, I want to ask you a question. So a woman called Kylie Jane Kramer posted on X, I've been trying to wrap my head around how the flooding in Texas became so devastating so quickly. Why not evacuate? Then I saw this. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick said the Guadalupe River rose 26 feet in just 46 minutes around 4 a.m. That doesn't even seem natural, to which you reposted this, and you put your own words. I heard God killed those kids because they were using NordVPN, promo code Destiny, to get around the Texas porn ban. On reflection, do you think that was grotesquely tasteless thing to be posting?
Absolutely not. The hand wringing here. Oh my God! Stop. If you want to talk about dead children, then you should talk about the residents of Kerr County who rejected using ARPA funds to build the very siren system that Ted Cruz was over here virtue signaling about. Now that the kids are dead, last I checked, the siren system isn't bringing anybody back to life. Okay, the very same system that they could have built for the better part of the last decade. They didn't want to touch those ARPA funds because they thought that if they did, Biden would go and steal their homes, which is the exact same lie that was told in North Carolina when people were rejecting FEMA funds because they thought that if the government was giving them money for their houses, they'd steal it. If you want to talk about grotesque and ghoulish things that are being said,
it's what you put online. I agree with you. It's what you run online. It is grotesque. It's disgusting. But I mean, I guess that's what you do.
How long have people like you told us that if we spend less money in Ukraine, you guys are going to spend more money investing in things like infrastructure in the United States? Where is that money going?
We just had another
massive debt increase. Another massive debt increase for more tax cuts for wealthy people. Congratulations. Thank you so much.
All right, let me get a Ben.
Okay, gang. So that was a tweet. Okay, that was what he said.
Wick, you're muted.
Oh, can you guys hear me? I said, okay, gang. So that was the tweet. That was the kind of call and response there, right? The back and forth. Well, first of all, before I get into my take on it, I'm just curious what you guys think about that. What is your thoughts on Destiny's tweet here, Destiny's statement about, and I'll read it again, right?
They're not using NordVPN code Destiny.
Yes. The kids, right? Joking about God killing those kids, right? Or weaponizing, I would argue, the dead children in order to make a larger point, or to attack his enemies, or to expose hypocrisy, etc., etc., etc. What are our thoughts here?
I'm a big fan of dark humor. I personally wouldn't get too mad at him for saying it. I do think Destiny keeps talking about wanting to be like a political guy, and that is just ineffective. You could have done like what the conservatives did in LA with the LA fires and criticized a lot more on the politicians of Texas for not doing the correct things, such as conservatives did in LA, being like, you didn't fill up the water reserves or what the fuck was going on there. That was like one of the big things going on. And again, he has a point. They just made it really poorly.
Made it really poorly. Why is that really poor? First of all, $5 from Alexander Rin to say, did Loki actually respond to any of the points or just no? Medicare is 100% the reason most ERs can continue to operate. Thank you for the $5. What are the rest of your thoughts? Okay. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, things like this flooding is what happens when you slash $200 million from the NOAA weather reporting system. I mean, it's kind of what happens when we prioritize doing stupid things like cutting taxes for billionaires and banning porn and focusing on like trying to all the stupid shit that they're trying to do just in the sake of cutting funding. For us to not be able to fucking properly alert people whenever there are going to be natural disasters, because we can predict flash floods and stuff ahead of time.
Okay, that was on the disaster, but what about his joke? Do you think his joke was tasteful? Did you find it funny? Do you think it was politically effective for what Destiny claims to try to want to do?
Oh, I absolutely think it was funny. I was fucking laughing while we were watching that.
Do you think it was effective, though?
I doubt it's politically effective, and it probably is like bad optically, but I think Destiny probably doesn't care because people, I mean, he's already optically so toxic that nothing matters.
I do not like...
It's probably the only one.
Sure. I'm trying to get this out here. How do I say this? I do not like this idea that I hear over and over and over again, that optics don't matter, or that where has nice got us, things like that. So let me guys read you guys my response to this, okay? And then I'll give you some choice responses that I got from my response, some people who had issues with what I said. So this is what I said in response to this, and we can maybe discuss it. And again, we can stay as long as you like. If you want to leave, I don't give a shit. It says this: the problem is that it becomes harder, not easier, to talk about the hypocrisy of Republicans when the omni-liberal, or Destiny in this case, does his edgy shtick. Instead of pointing out all the times Republicans have been hypocrites, we're stuck talking about the edgy tweet. We're stuck talking about, again, Piers Morgan didn't bring up the hypocrisy. He brought up the edgy tweet, right? I promise you, okay, you can discuss the depredations and failures of Republicans and MAGA and Trump without using dead kids as a weapon to mock these hypocrites. A lot of people didn't like my take, though, right? A lot of people didn't like what I had to say. I guess Nonfon was bored, but that's okay, yeah. Some comments from Sin Love says, has this not been the strategy of liberals for the last 20 years? It seems to have led us down the path towards the destruction of our government, and you think this is the right path to continue down? In regards to my tweet, they say things like, yeah, but one can argue that one of the reasons he gets invited to these shows is because of the edgy shticks. Some other things that they say, such as, he's on the panel talking about Republican hypocrisy. I'd say it worked pretty well. Destiny, let me see. No, absolutely not. Republicans do not live in reality. You have them literally saying it's okay if Trump raped kids. You can show the AK operator making fun of dead kids and tragedies for left area states and show him crying here about jokes side by side, and they will not care. Congrats. You can maintain the high ground over the pile of corpses left in the wake of your benevolence. The only thing that will allow left-leaning values to win permanently is to stop placating the right. We need to stop acting like we all live in the same reality and adopt some of their tactics. Make fun of them while using facts of the situation to back up what you say. Make them laugh with truth so the Vibe voters come to the correct side. And on and on and on. Of people very upset that I'm being a quote-unquote optics Andy here. I don't know, gang. I don't... I'm just curious, like, what they think will happen, right? Well, what benefit is given for these jokes? Like, what is Destiny gaining here? What does anyone gain when they joke about dead children, right?
And typically can help like lead a narrative for whatever side. If you're like a liberal, Columbine, one of the situations they were actively advocating for like a gun ban or trying to like very much get rid of guns. Typically, people will use like dead children or these types of situations to appeal to people's emotions, which that's where like I would just say that I found it hilarious that Destiny was like shouting out, they didn't use like Nord, co-Destiny, but we can see this happening on both sides. And when it comes to Destiny, I would just say that most people like the situation of him being edgy, and as like one of the biggest liberals when it comes to like them debating, like it's very much helping him out.
Yeah, but I
Humor is.
don't care if it helps him out specifically, right? Whether or not there is a benefit to one's numbers, right? One's pocketbook by doing this isn't my concern, frankly. I don't care if it makes people money doing this. I care, is this effective? Will this get me what I want, which is for Democrats to actually win elections?
Yeah,
You think it
when it
will?
comes to
Why?
like when it comes to the emotional side of like arguments, like, oh, what about the children? You can see about the situations right after Columbine. A lot more people were up like very much on the side of we should maybe regulate when it comes to pistols or AR platforms or 5.56, whatever the fuck. You can see the situation in Colorado. The second that any situation has happened where it comes to children, typically you're going to be able to get some people on your side when it comes to the action.
Yeah, I mean, we could see how where the over dramatization of situations is effective when it comes to politics. I mean, look at pretty much the entirety of all of Trump's speeches. He fucking over dramatizes fucking everything, and it's been very effective for him. So like the over dramatization of stuff in politics does bring more attention to it.
Yeah, but this isn't an over dramatization, right? That's a very interesting. I don't think that's a very accurate way to describe what's going on here. He's not over dramatic. He's not being hyperbolic, right? He's not taking and blowing something out of proportion. What he's doing is he's basically making a joke about dead kids, or he's using dead kids to make a joke and make fun of and mock other people, right? To be a little more correct here, he's using what happened as a vehicle in order to mock other actors, right? Or in other kind of conspiracy theories and things like that. But it's still using dead kids, right? It's still using their bodies.
It was kind of an over dramatization though, because what he was saying was he was saying that God was killing them because they were watching porn using a VPN. That is in a way an over dramatization of it.
Okay, he didn't. No, that wasn't the point of the tweet, right? He wasn't actually saying that God killed those kids. He didn't actually believe that, right?
He was being facetious.
I'm saying that.
Yes.
He was using it as a vehicle to kind of expose conspiracy theory thinking and things like that, and also to mock people promoting themselves during a disaster and things like that. I do not think that this kind of energy, like a lot of people say, I hear this all the time, that, oh, Trump did it and Trump won, so it must be good. But I think that this is faulty for a few reasons. It assumes that Trump won because of, and not in spite of, right, his edgy, mean humor, etc. And I don't see any evidence that it was because of his edgy humor that he won. I see much more evidence that it was in spite of that he won, right? So that's the first thing I think a lot of people get wrong about this. And the second thing I think a lot of people get wrong about this is they only won once in the last 8 years or so, right? I guess 2016, you could count that too. So twice out of like all the election cycles. So you had 2016, they won. That's fair. Then you had 2018, they lost. 2020, they lost. 2022, they lost, right? And they won this one as well, barely. 2024. So if you have 5, barely.
Off of what was it barely?
Off of what was it barely? So if you had 3 states,
Probably the Senate.
Pennsylvania, Wyoming, and not Wyoming, I'm sorry.
Wisconsin.
Pennsylvania, Wisconsin.
Michigan.
Michigan. If they had a swap of less than 2%, right? Less than 2%, then we would be looking at President Kamala Harris right now. That's a very narrow margin.
2% of the population.
Oh, and would you agree that it would be also use that same logic? It'd be a very narrow margin in the 2020 election.
It wasn't like a runaway
It was
blowout in
very
2020.
narrow. It would have been very narrow. You would have to have the same to be consistent across the board.
Okay.
Because I'm pretty sure it wasn't less than 2. I think it was less than 3 or something of that nature. I'll have to double check.
It was narrow. It was very narrow, and that's my point. We don't have really blowout elections here, and again, I think that there was a lot of fucky-wucky going on with 2024 enough that I don't know if we can use this as a real touchstone for whether or not this supposes any kind of mandate. Like, we had Biden get pushed out of the race just 3 months before the election, something very unprecedented that happened. I think that, again, to say that Republicans are doing it and it's working for them and they are winning because of that, it's just faulty logic. I don't see any evidence that that's the case.
Yeah, I think we all kind of agree that it is kind of optically bad. I mean,
okay,
we thought it was funny. I mean,
fair enough that you guys agree, right? But
yeah, we thought it was funny.
I mean, you might think it's funny.
The first question, Wick, the first question you asked us was, did we find it funny? But you have yet to answer. So was that joke Destiny made
I don't find it very funny, no. But it doesn't matter if I find it funny. It could be the most hilarious joke in the world.
To me.
It could be the most hilarious joke in the world. But that said, that isn't the question in my mind. It's not, do I find it funny? Or is this joke funny? What the question is, to me, is this style of engagement effective for winning elections? Specific question here. I don't care if it's effective for getting me numbers in my stream. But you guys keep saying yes. Where is the evidence, or what is your argument that this style of engagement wins elections? Go ahead.
Well, political jokes are kind of like the cornerstone to change people's minds. Like, I think Dave Chappelle was kind of really big on this, and a lot of his jokes are also pretty dark. So, like, if you actually want to, like, get to people's mind, like, comedy is the easiest way to do it. If you can make somebody laugh, there's kind of like a truth in that. So I don't see why not. Destiny is obviously not the person to do it. It is one of the hardest things to do. So it's yes, but only if, like, the person is really skilled at comedy. Obviously, Destiny is not. So for him, it would be bad.
Is that, I mean, I understand if you could, I just don't think this makes most people laugh. I don't think this type of joke about dead babies makes most people laugh after a disaster.
He's bad at it.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like somebody else could do it better.
I mean, like I've said on your channel in the past, dark humor is like food. Not everyone gets it.
Guess so. But
and if you find someone that does get it, and they might switch their political ideology when it comes to the actions, kind of like when I brought it to Columbine, the Democrats were actively like trying to oppose a lot more laws and to be able to ban a lot more weapons, which we can look at the state. More weapons are banned in that state because of it.
Well, wait. What would you say? Like, if you had a better comedian up there making a similar joke to Destiny, like kind of mocking the kids, do you think if the joke was like reformed, would it be politically advantageous?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
No. Why would it? I don't think making jokes about dead kids gets you votes. I think it loses you votes overall. I think people find it tasteless.
There's no world where it's possible. Okay.
There's no world where it's possible?
Yeah, my question was like if a really skilled comedian made a joke.
I don't think so. I don't think if the joke is that these kids died, ha ha ha, if it was a joke, if it's using dead children of a recent catastrophe as a joke, I don't think I think it's going to lose you. For every vote it might gain you, you're going to lose 10.
Wait, you're making the positive claim. Are you able to substantiate this?
No, it's this is all conjecture. You can't fucking no one can substantiate any of their claims here.
I know. I'm just talking shit. But yeah, look at the situation when it comes to California. When a couple of the school shootings happened, they went more for the platform of banning any type of magazines because the Democrats were actively advocating for this. If we're sitting here and saying that this doesn't win the votes,
did they do that through jokes?
A lot of people
what you're saying, if
actively...
I'm and correct me if I'm wrong, because maybe I'm not hearing you correctly, but what you seem to be saying is that there was a school shooting in California, and California used that school shooting in order to advocate for gun laws, more restrictive gun laws, and they successfully used that to get that passed. That is a remarkably different thing than what we're talking about today, which is using edgy
One
humor.
of the quotes that they used was, back in the day, we didn't call them school shootings, we called them surprise hide and seek. One of the quotes from a lot of the people in California that were advocating for banning a lot more of the magazines and a lot of other situations.
Yeah, I just don't see the connection, man. I don't think that these are analogous. I don't think that using an event to advocate, right? If a tragedy happens and you use that tragedy to advocate for a political position or a political change, that is much different than trying to expose hypocrisy on the other side by being as edgy and crass as possible with a joke about the dead children in that event, or the dead people in that event, to be clear, and then using that to try to change hearts and minds. I don't think that changes hearts and minds in a way that is positive for your cause. I would argue, and I would posit, that it just makes sense, that it would turn people off from your cause, and they would, again, your cause would be stymied by this rather than helped. And I see a lot of people in chat saying, well, oh, Trump won. Yes, my argument is in spite of, not because of.
All right. You keep mentioning like hypocrisy, because we all kind of like agree, at least me and Vigilante here,
Sure,
that for the most part it is going to be politically disadvantageous unless you get like some god tier comedian. Like I think Dave Chappelle can pull it off. You don't. We'll have to agree to disagree there. But keep saying hypocritical. Do you think like I'm curious. Do you think exposing people for being hypocrites when it comes to like the political arena is an effective means of getting them out of office, or changing it from like a red seat to a blue seat, or a blue seat to a red seat?
So, I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear your. Can you repeat it, please?
Hold on, I got caught. Keep mentioning like exposing people for being hypocrites is a better position to take. Do you think just exposing
hold on, better than what? Better
hypocrites?
than making jokes about dead children? Yeah. Does that mean that exposing people as hypocrites is going to be effective? Maybe not. That's not my claim, right? It's just that it's going to be less ineffective than, or another way of saying more effective than the jokes about children, right?
Oh, okay. Wow, it seemed like that's what you were focusing on a lot, was like the hypocritical stance. So let's say not in because of. Do you think it's an effective strategy just to be exposing like these people as being hypocrites?
I don't know.
You want to switch people to vote for Dems more? Like,
no, I don't
know
if that matters.
For being hypocrites, instead of not making jokes, what would you recommend? I'm actually curious.
Again, not making jokes is a good start, right? I know 1,000 ways not to build a light bulb, and that's important. $5 from Esoteric Dichotomy to say, no, Wick. Trump won because of it, because he and his cult are zombies and monsters. Dems can't replicate it because different voting base. I disagree, Esoteric Dichotomy. I don't disagree with you that a lot of MAGA is cultish in their behavior, but they would, again, no matter what Trump did or said, go along with and vote for Trump. If Trump was the most magnanimous person ever and never made a edgy joke, they would still support him. Right? Because, as you said, they're kind of cult-like in their behavior. Whatever Trump says, they'll do. So Trump can say whatever he wants, whether that be good or bad, and he'll still get a large portion of the vote. Again, that doesn't mean that it's because he's so... I don't want to use the word sassy. That's not the right word. Because he's edgy, or not edgy, but because he's mean, that's what gives him his power. I don't think it does. And then $5 from Alexander Rin to say, hasn't Trump proven that the only bad coverage is no coverage? Again, I think that, yes, but there are other ways to get coverage that are not bad or at least less bad. And I would advocate for those. Thank you for the money, gang. Okay, $5 from Wick, from Alexander Rin to say, Wick, what would you say that Destiny's point with the comment was, other than being edgy? So I think that he was pointing out, because again, it was quote tweeting someone, and the quote tweet was implying that the disaster was not natural, that the flood there was something unnatural with the flood, right? And he's also taking it, so he's mocking that a little bit, right? And he's also taking a shot at people talking who promote themselves during disasters, like people who go out there and says, you can help these kids, and look at me helping these kids, and by the way, donate to my GoFundMe, or by the way, subscribe to my channel, or by the way, give me super chats and things like that. I'm not making a stance on whether that's good or bad right here. I'm just explaining, in my view, what Destiny was doing here. Does anyone disagree? I mean, that's what he was mocking. It seems clear.
I thought he was mocking more the thoughts and prayers people.
Yeah, I thought it was thoughts and prayers.
I think you're off base there, Wick.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Pull up in your chat. Let's go.
I just I don't know, the context doesn't, I mean, that might be true as well, but I think that again, in the context, he was making fun of that additional person, and also with the VPN comment specifically, making fun of people who promote themselves during events. So it was a kind of two-pronged thing. I don't know, gang. Okay, I'm gonna let you guys go. I'm gonna send you backstage. I love you guys. Thanks for being here.
Good luck.
Ladies and gentlemen, what is going on today? Is it me? Am I the one that is boring today? Is it me? Am I at fault here for this? Maybe, right? Am I just, maybe the vibes are off, dude. Maybe the vibes are just off today. Maybe I'm the one who, I failed at the content today. I'm sorry. I apologize. This is my bad, I suppose. The lack of hoodie power, perhaps. I am just sick and tired, frankly. I'm sick and tired of people saying this. I think this just false claim. This false claim that we have to go low, because if we don't go low, that Trump's gonna win. I don't think going low helps us. I don't think it works for us. I don't think it brings anyone in. There was no one who is waiting for some Democrat politician, right, to make dead children jokes before they go out and vote for them. I don't think that's happening. I don't think that's happening. However, I think that there's a lot of people who look at large influencers making tasteless, crass comments, and it's not just this one, and it's not just Destiny, frankly, right? All the people who were praising and cheering on the CEO of United Healthcare getting whacked, making all sorts of memes and jokes about it. I think that turned a lot of people off. I do. I think that this race to the bottom that we're doing or trying to do, it's not even effective. I think that we need to stop trying to be like Republicans. We need to stop trying to be like Republicans. We need to stop acting like MAGA. People need to see a fucking difference between the two. And you act like, oh, there is a difference. I agree. There's a large difference. But people operate on vibes. They operate on optics. They operate on messaging. And you can say that's stupid and dumb, but it's reality, baby. So what's more stupid and dumb? To insist that you go policy and do all this kind of like nasty jokes because the other side's doing nasty jokes? Or is it better to do what is effective? Okay? Effective by, again, drawing clear, bright lines and distinctions between us and them. $10 from Alexander Rin to say, I think he was contrasting the idiocy of spending time regulating porn when your party is letting infrastructure crumble and weather forecasting, but then tossing in their thoughts and prayers. Perhaps. I just am really tired and exhausted, and I want to win next time, gang. I want to win in the midterms. I do. I want to win. I think it is important that we win. This ain't the way. I think what it is, a lot of people are frustrated because they're angry, okay? They're angry that Trump won. They're angry, in some cases, understandably so. They're upset because they feel like their way of life, America, the values that they hold dear, are being shit on and being torn apart by ravenous wolves. And they're angry and they're upset and they want to lash out, okay? And so they want to do to others what they feel has been done to them. They have this burning need to do unto others as they have been done unto, right? And I'm begging you to understand that that's not going to work. It's not going to stop the problem. It's going to make it worse. It's going to make it worse. It doesn't help. There is no benefit other than you feel good. You feel good in the moment. You owned those guys. You own those. Ha ha ha. You made a joke about dead children. Ha ha ha. It doesn't, the needle doesn't move in your direction at all. And I would argue it runs away from you. The Baby Seal Club says this is a bad argument. Hunter Young says, if you want to win, then stop virtue signaling on this. It only tears it down more. How does it tear it down more precisely? Like, how does me saying, hey, behave well, how does that make it harder for Democrats to win specifically? I'm open to the argument. I just haven't heard a good one. Hunter Young says, because you are expecting others to behave well when we live in an ecosystem that punishes us for behaving well. I don't think it, I think it does in microcosms. Let me explain. So I've said this before, and I think I'll explain this again, that there's like two threads going on here. There's what's good for the individual content creator, okay? These incentive structures for the individual content creator, I think you guys are, Hunter Young, you're spot on. You're spot on, okay? You were rewarded for being a snake. You're rewarded for being as ostentatious as possible. You're rewarded for being as crazy as possible. You're rewarded for being as mean, edgy, partisan as possible. The more you preach to the choir and the more you denigrate the enemy, the more money you get, the more attention you get, the more influence you get within your circles. So you are spot on with that. But the second thread is going a running parallel to this, okay? That those kinds of influencers make people run away in a general election or an election situation. People do not like it. People, other than the choir, hate it, in fact. What the Republicans, what the right has done very, very effectively, that I would argue this is what we should do as well, okay? They have tied leftist extremists to the Democratic Party. They've married them hand in hand. If we want to do that, I'm all for it. I think it's effective, right? Because it highlights the other side's crazy. I'll give you an example. You want to see effective messaging? I'll show you effective messaging, okay? And I'm going to use one of my tweets to do it because, God damn it, I'm good at this, okay? This is a tweet I made in response. Hold on, let me let you guys say it. This is a tweet, quote tweeting Senator Ted Cruz, right? Saying some bullshit about on Texas floods. This is not a time for partisan finger pointing and attacks. Dude, this Senator Ted Cruz has been partisan finger pointing constantly on this shit, okay? Constantly. It's what he does all the time. So I made a tweet pointing out the hypocrisy, saying know the rules. If it's a blue state, it's good to politicize a tragedy. If it's a red state, it's, quote, not a time for partisan finger pointing and attacks. Okay? This is an effective strategy that, one, doesn't involve making fun of dead children and highlights the problems at hand and the hypocrisy of the Republicans. Okay? And it's blowing up. 46,000 likes. Okay? It's no Piers Morgan appearance, right? But it's getting traction because it works. And notice how I didn't have to make fun of dead kids to do this. Notice how I didn't have to debase myself and behave like MAGA in order to do this. This is what we need more of. We need people to point out the bad actors on the right, highlight them, pedestal them, and say, this is what MAGA is, right? This is what Trump is. That is harder to do. And I can't stress this enough. That is harder to do when we have bad actors too that they can highlight. We want as little as possible bad actors on our side, okay? We want to give them no ammunition. As little as possible. And Destiny gives them ammunition. And it's good for him. It works on a personal, individual level, but I think it fails overall. Let me see if anyone's saying anything. Substance says, I disagree a lot with you on how we should take the fight to the Republicans, but I definitely agree with you on this one for sure. Well, thank you. J-Max says, behave like MAGA is... Wick TV is debasing himself if he thinks that MAGA is unique in this way. That's my whole point. It's not unique, but I want to be less like MAGA, right? But a lot of people want to be the same. They want to behave the same. So you're correct. It's not unique. I wish it was, but it is not. That's my whole point. I don't understand. Why do you think that's debasing myself? Wick TV is better than Destiny, and most of the electorate doesn't know them. Again, it's not individually for my personal gain effective. If I want to be effective, right? If I want to make money, if I wanted to make as much money as I possibly could in this, and look, I'll be real, I do want to make money doing this job. I like this job. I like being able to stream to you guys. I like being able to talk to you guys. I like being able to give my opinions and to have you guys pay me for my opinions and to reward me, right, for telling the truth and being genuine, even if you disagree with me. And I do appreciate that. But if I wanted to make serious money on this, there's a formula to do it. I know this formula. It's just I can't stomach it. So the first thing you do, let me explain to you for those of you who want to, okay? If you want to cast aside principles, okay? Pick a side. Doesn't matter what. Doesn't matter right or left. Doesn't matter, okay? Pick one. Everything that your side does, run cover for it. Praise it. Excuse any bad actions. Make sure that you attack anyone who attacks that side, and you do it effectively, right? So there's skill involved here. You have to actually be an effective rhetorician. You have to be charismatic, things like that, okay? Anytime that your side says something, toe the line, okay? If you want to disagree on the margins, disagree small. And that could be effective, too, to kind of bolster your, like, I'm a truth teller. But don't actually challenge any of the core principles that your side is saying, okay? When Trump makes some gross talk about the Epstein files, make sure that you say comments like, oh, man, why are we talking about the Epstein files now when there's a flood in Texas, right? Make sure you do that kind of shit, okay? If you are on the left and some leftist influencer or Democratic influencer makes a crazy tweet about dead children, excuse it and say, well, the MAGA does it too, so we have to do it as well to win, right? Do all that. That's what you need to do, okay? And do it often do it with flair, and do it with charisma, and you will gain an audience that will pay you big, big money. I'm not even talking sponsors here. I'm talking individuals. People want to know why they are right. They want to hear why they are correct. They don't want to hear the truth. Let's be real here. They don't want to hear the actual facts of the matter. They don't want to hear what's actually going on. They don't want to hear what's real. What they want is for you to justify their pre-existing belief system. They want you to justify why they are right and why it's okay for them to be assholes to the other side. That's what the people want. Does anyone disagree with my premise here? KO Dave says, you're raging against the dying of the light, buddy? Yes, I am. Because what is incentivizing individuals is destroying the whole. We have more and more and more people are not voting for anything. They're voting against. Right? And this is a artifact. It is a incidental result. And I don't know if incidental is the right word here, but it is a result of the rise of influencers and how they have kind of put a stranglehold on the conversation, right? They drive the discourse, even with journalists, right? Journalists listen to influencers, and it all kind of feeds into each other. It's all kind of connected in this parasocial web, okay, of bullshit. There are thought leaders. There is a market out there, a real market for spin, okay? And this is all seen by the general public entertaining but very off-putting. And this rage, this anger, this hate for the other side is being built up, okay? Because it's rewarded by these influencers. So you have more and more people tuning out or voting against. And I don't want to see that. I want to see people vote for. Hunter Young says, I'm slightly missing the point here. Explain. Hunter, why don't you just jump backstage and we can talk? If you really disagree with me, jump backstage and we can talk. You need a link to Discord or something? I don't know. It's easier than waiting for your chats, frankly. Sure. You have to click. Yeah, so what's your Discord name, buddy? I'll give you a role. Are you Infinite Hunter? Either way, what you need to do is you need to accept the rules. So there'll be your gatherer old. Let me see. I don't even see you on the members list. Hold on. Give me a second, please. I have to do... Oh, no, you have it. You have the role. You're fine. Just jump backstage. It's literally at the top of the... It's at the top of the Discord server. It's called Backstage. Click it. Plot twist, it's Hunter Biden. If you're Hunter Biden, that'd be awesome. But I don't think you are. Yeah, jump backstage. There you are. Then I drag you on like this, and we talk.
Sweet.
Can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
What? Yeah, so you said I'm slightly missing the point. Explain, please.
Yeah, so can you tell me what you mean when you're saying that we cannot act like MAGA, or that you disagree that we should act like MAGA?
Both. I think that MAGA wins in spite of its terrible actions, right? The crazy, hateful rhetoric that they spew. And I think that if we start to, as many advocate for, go low and indulge our baser instincts, I think that it's going to hurt us because people are going to stop. People already have trouble. Well, let me ask you this. Do you agree with me on the statement that people already are having trouble seeing a real difference between the right and the left in America?
I think people gesture to that. I don't know how much I believe them, though.
I mean, I believe them because I think people are generally ill-informed, misinformed. I think they're mostly tuned out. But I think not most, but there's a sizable selection of people in America who do not see a tangible difference between the left and right.
Okay, do you think that it is the actual acts that the left and the right do, or do you think it's more of the rhetoric that is based around the left and the right, or
Both.
the weaponization of the rhetoric?
Both. I think both are true. I think that they feed off each other, right? So the rhetoric the behavior is amplified by the rhetoric, right? But the behavior exists. And if the behavior doesn't exist, it's less effective. So it's just true, and I'll just grant you, that no matter what the left does, no matter what people like Destiny, no matter what people on the left does, MAGA and rightoids are going to say that they're bad and evil and do evil things. I think that's just true. But I think that the effectiveness of that statement is lessened greatly when they have less to point to, right? When they have less incidents of the left behaving, in my opinion, poorly to point to. So when people say things like, well, Trump and MAGA are hateful, the counter to that by a lot of people is said, well, so is the left. And they'll point to and they'll do the whataboutism, the both sidesism, and things like that, which I disagree with. I think they're wrong. But I understand why they think that, and I understand the mechanisms that are causing them, that are feeding into that false narrative. And one of those mechanisms, which I'm advocating against, I'm advocating for us to just stop because I don't think it gives us any benefit, is making edgy fucking jokes about dead children.
Okay, what would your diagnosis be for why the MAGA crowd infinitely gets to get away with not just like the rhetoric that is dog shit, absolutely abhorrent, but also the cultural wins, the political wins, and then also the legislative wins? Like, what would the distinction be there?
Sir, I think they haven't had much of those until very recently, 2024. As I said, I think that other than 2016, they've lost every single election except for 2024, right? And 2024 was a pretty unique scenario because, again, Biden was being pushed out by the party. There was a weird kind of switch of the candidate that no one voted for in the primaries, right? The Kamala Harris. And I think that combined with the economy and inflation and things like that just meant that the incumbent was probably going to lose. So unfortunately, Trump won the nomination in the Republican Party, right? I think the Republican Party has become extremist. And he's the guy that got the benefit of that.
Yeah, but he got the benefit because he ran off of rhetoric that was explicitly condemning the Democrats, regardless of them being at fault or them doing good. He reaped the benefits of the good that the Democrats did. He lied directly to everybody. He had all of his fan base completely back him, regardless of the rhetoric or regardless of the rhetoric that the people that support him were espousing. All of this is a huge, meaningful distinction, regardless of the irregularities that existed. You will never see them hold Donald Trump accountable for acting in a similar way that Joe Biden did in that case. You agree with that, right?
I agree with that.
They're never going to push him out?
I agree with that.
Okay.
But I don't think that it's because of his rhetoric. Or I don't think it's because he's making edgy jokes or being mean. I don't think that's why they're supporting him. I think they're supporting him because they see him as, and again, I don't think this is actually true, but this is how they see him, right? They see him as a way to get revenge on their enemies, right? They see as a way to kind of a firebomb into the system. And so I think that no matter what he says, no matter how he acts, he will be voted for because he's not the institution. He's not an insider. He's not of the government. And they want to kind of see that go away. So I don't think I don't think his edgy rhetoric has a huge effect on that. And even if it does,
well, I would say,
and I'll finish and then I'll let you go. I'm sorry. I know I'm long-winded here, so I apologize.
You're fine.
Right? I think that to the extent that it does, I don't think we can out evil Trump. I don't think we out mean Trump or MAGA. I think that they're just going to beat us on that front. And so if we want to compete, if we want to win against MAGA, we have to offer an alternative for the people who have been disgusted, right, by politics, by both parties, right, who are disgusted about all the extremism that they see on both parties, right? And again, I'm not both sidesing here. I think they're wrong. I'm just telling you how I think they see it. So I think that
about the perception of it.
Yeah. I think we need an alternative, and I don't think going low gives us an alternative. It's just MAGA light, and why would you vote for the lesser evil?
Okay, so I think I'm almost getting at the distinction that you're making that I feel like you're missing. You combine the words when you were saying that the Democrats, that we cannot out evil or out mean Donald Trump. I think that we can out mean MAGA. I don't think that we have to out evil MAGA. Does that make sense?
Sure. I would say I would posit to you that making jokes about dead children, it's a very low amount of evil, right? I'm not like sitting here saying, "Oh, you're going to hell" or anything, right? But it's
okay. Maybe the distinction, like whenever you're saying evil, you're referring to a broader sense of like including the jokes, and I'm
including
also
the jokes, but it's not just the jokes.
Yeah. Okay. Whenever I'm saying evil, I'm more specifically referring to like acting on the evil, like enacting policy or like withholding FEMA aid depending on the states, if they voted for him or not, or
Okay,
like
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So
do you think most people vote on policy?
No, but I'm saying that because I'm saying that's why I was making the distinction between the out mean and the out evil, is because whenever I'm referring to the out evil that you had mentioned, I'm referring to the policies and stuff that they were doing. That's what I see as being evil. I don't necessarily see. I would group like jokes like the dead baby jokes as being mean, but that's just a distinction, like a semantic distinction that I'm making from you. And I was going to say earlier, you were talking about the people are tired of institutions. Like, do you think it's more institutional or less institutional for like edgy jokes like that to exist?
Less institutional.
Regardless of them being bad or not.
Yeah, less institutional.
Okay.
It's a kind of a counterculture blow against norms and things like that.
Okay, I agree. And I'm sure, I think you would agree too that like despite your tweet like blowing up, coinciding that with your acknowledgement of being able to grow bigger as a channel depending on like what formula that you use, and you identify the formula, that the rhetoric and the stuff that it doesn't have to be Destiny in particular, it can be like anybody and just in general, like doing that, like you would agree that that's more inflammatory, it gets it more into the spotlight, it gets more people seeing it, talking about it. Like, you agree with that, right?
Yes, but I disagree with the notion that all publicity is good publicity. I think that's wrong. I think that's incorrect.
I don't know if it's necessarily good publicity, but I think it has the potential to become good publicity. So whenever you see people that are aligned with MAGA and they're doing absolute like fuck shit, whether it be politically or whatever they say, you'll have people like whenever it becomes uncomfortable for them. I think you saw that with the Jeffrey Epstein thing, where it's like, oh well, like I know we said that we were going to actually like release the files, but you know, like we actually looked into it, and our FBI and the DOJ said there was actually nothing that was actually like kind of going on. So like, yeah, it looks like he killed himself, guys. And then Trump is even like, why are you guys asking about this? This is bullshit.
For the QAnon crowd is hurting right now. Okay.
Yeah. So my I think my overall point with that is that you have the ability to weaponize that discussion.
You can.
That is being propelled from rhetoric from people like Destiny. Well, again, it doesn't have to specifically be Destiny, but having people that are out there saying that, like, okay, this is a bad look. Like, we don't necessarily like, or you don't even have to like condemn it outright, but you can be like, I don't agree, right? Or I don't even know. You don't have to go the explicit route of saying this is bad or whatever, because then it just gives them ammunition too, as like what you were saying, to say like, oh, well, the left is so like disorganized and they're infighting and blah blah blah. When it can just be like, okay, maybe maybe it's a little too mean for me, like exactly like what they did with Donald Trump whenever they're talking about the Haitian immigrants and everything like that. Like they were like, oh, well, I don't like his rhetoric, or if he got off of Twitter, like LOL, like that would be a much better if he was a little nicer, teehee. But within that, they're building off of that and defending what is being said, the policies that are being enacted, the actual things that I believe to be evil, the actual things that I believe to be mean, and they're weaponizing that, but they're downplaying it. That's the distinction I would make.
Maybe I'm missing, right? Maybe I'm missing it here, and maybe I just didn't hear it or something, right? What is the connection that you're trying to make between Trump's comments and behavior towards the Epstein files? Which I agree, we should point that out. I don't know if it's mean or not, but I don't care. I do think that they made a promise. They broke that promise. They lied about it. And I think it's pretty clear that they did. And we can point that out. And I don't think there's anything wrong with pointing that out. I just don't see how that's the same as what Destiny did with the kids' jokes.
Well, I was mentioning the Epstein files to show that, like, despite the hypocrisy, despite how the lies and everything added on to that, like, they'll still defend it regardless, no matter what. They'll go in spite of their virtues, and they will like follow lockstep behind this behavior, behind lies that they ran on during the campaign. They will.
There's a segment who will, but I would
follow
posit
100% through with the rhetoric.
Yeah,
like,
I would posit that this is going to be one of the things that bites them in the ass in the midterms. I think that they're going to lose support. That Trump, MAGA, Republicans, et al. Are going to lose support because of this, electorally. Now, is it going to be everyone stop supporting them? No. But it's going to be enough. Do you disagree? Hello? Am I frozen? Hello? Gang, is this me? Or is this him? Okay, everyone's hearing me. I can't hear you anymore, buddy. If you're talking, you're not coming through. I don't know why. You were just a few minutes ago.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. Okay. So, yeah, do you disagree with my assertion here? That
Hold on, I don't know if...
Can you hear me?
Okay, now I can.
Now you can hear me.
But I heard you saying, do I disagree with...
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, so yeah, just to reiterate, do you disagree with my assertion that this Epstein fiasco is going to hurt the MAGA Republicans in the midterms?
Yes, but I think it's for a different reason rather than the... Like, I don't think this is rhetoric based. I think it's because of the type of rhetoric that they used is they built up this grand narrative about these elite pedophiles and how they're going to come in and they're going to expose them and blah, blah, blah. But the misalignment is the combination of what their rhetoric led up to, plus the, what would you say? Plus the lack of follow through. It's not like them.
Oh, sure, it's not a
them
one-to-one.
using the rhetoric
sure,
in
I agree,
itself.
It's not a one-to-one thing, but you brought up the Epstein file, so and you posited that they're not going to lose any followers from that, and I disagreed. right? So this is how we got here, right? Is you said that you brought it up as an example. You said because of the Epstein files, and even though they did a 180 on that, a lot of people aren't leaving the MAGA movement. I agree that a lot of them aren't, but enough of them will punish them for this, and this is a disagreement we have on this specifically, that enough of them will in the midterms to make a difference. Now, I agree that's not the same as edgy jokes. It's not the same as being like mean or whatever, right? Or rhetorically assholes, I guess, for lack of a better term. But I'm just dwelling in the example that you gave. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah. But the example that I gave was to show that these people are lockstep with their rhetoric. So Trump will say something, the people that support him will say it, the followers themselves will say it, but it's that lack of follow through that is the thing that is harmful for them. So what I'm saying is that you can weaponize that rhetoric, and build off to actual like good policy, to actual good real world changes. You don't have to like fall in line with MAGA like in that way where you're using this more edgy rhetoric to lead to the shitty outcomes or these shitty promises that they lead to. Like you can use that rhetoric to build off of into something more effective politically. Like, does that make sense?
No, I disagree. Okay. I think that like this kind of rhetoric of edgy humor, I don't think that brings in a crowd that wants to build anything. I think that brings in a crowd who wants to destroy. I think that it brings in a crowd that wants to tear down the other side, which may be fine if you think the other side needs to be torn down, but I think there are other ways to bring in that crowd as well. My thesis statement on this is that Destiny being edgy, whether that be from the fireman joke he made or the kid's joke he made, and it doesn't have to be Destiny, it could be anyone, Kyle Kolinsky, anyone, right? Anyone in this purview. That kind of humor and that kind of engagement hurts the overall cause, even if it might benefit the individual who is doing that. That is my thesis statement. Why is that wrong?
Sure, and I don't... So, when you say it doesn't really bring a crowd, well, I think that's what you said, right? It doesn't really bring a crowd.
No, it doesn't benefit the cause.
Okay. You would agree that the crowd that it does bring around is the crowd that is interested in the discussion of both sides talking about it, right? Like you're having these panels. Piers Morgan has those panels with different content creators. Then those clips kind of blow up and then go into like different YouTube videos or like X feeds. Like you would agree that spreads, right?
It does.
Okay. So instead of endorsing the things that people like Destiny would say, why don't you just use it essentially as a stepping stone to continue to condemn their behavior, but not like apologize for him being edgy? Like I don't see those as being like mutually exclusive. I think you can do like both of those together. And that's why I brought up the Epstein stuff where it's like, okay, well, it does kind of look bad, but like, and then they'll go on and defend it.
Okay. So,
like what about sorry, the last thing. Sure. It's like whenever I forgot his name. Was it Jack Posobiec or whatever? I think it was him. I don't know. I saw Peace Corps. It was like the implication was that Nancy Pelosi and other
you're roboting, man. I can't understand you.
Other Democrats are not talking about this because it does not lead.
I can't understand
most likely
what you're
on the list.
You're roboting. I can't hear you. I'm sure there was a great point there. I just didn't hear it because you were roboting. Okay, while you fix that, I'll just answer the first part of the question that you asked. I'm sorry I don't have the context of the second part. I just didn't hear it. I apologize. Yes, I obviously can use this as a stepping stone to talk about the issue at hand, right? And I can condemn the actions. I can condemn what he says. That's all fine. I can do that. I am doing that. That's basically why we're having this conversation right now, right? I just think I don't need... That is not a necessary...
Here, real quick. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can I call you on my phone instead?
I'm if you want, but
I'm just disconnecting. I'm disconnecting from my computer at the moment.
Okay, disconnect. We're not gonna take up too much more time, right? So, oh god. Okay, let me try to. Okay, are you here? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Well, you sound way different, but that's okay.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. Let me get through my point before I forget it. Right?
Alright.
As I said, we can obviously, as you said, use what Destiny said or anyone else says, the bad actions, the bad jokes, as a stepping stone to talk about the larger issue. That is possible. We're doing it, right? I think this is one way of doing that. That is absolutely effective. However, I don't think that it's a necessary component, and this is where I think we might disagree. I don't think we have to, this doesn't have to be the stepping stone. And I think that having a more positive stepping stone would have, if not a benefit, at least none of the negatives of that as a stepping stone. And I think that it would just be better overall. I think it's better overall if we just don't have any unforced errors. And I think what Destiny tweeted and his joke there was an unforced error. It didn't need to happen, and yet it did.
Okay. So the reason I was asking earlier about if him tweeting that and people covering it got more attention was because we have been trying messaging with niceties, with oftentimes saying like nothing, and all it's done is like punish us. We get no, like, even if we try to defend our side in those instances, we're still punished. So like, what's the, and there's no conversation that is being spearheaded in those instances either. So whenever Destiny makes comments like that, or anybody in general, like, you have the ability to be the one spearheading it. That's why I think, to a much lesser extent, when Tim Walz is going, like, getting popular, and you see the MAGA people for once kind of being on the back foot by being called weird, or by saying that JD Vance fucks couches, like, being on, like, spearheading that, or taking advantage of somebody else spearheading that, I think can lead to a much more effective thing. Yeah.
I don't see the couch fucking joke in the same universe as the kids are dead joke. I think these are different things. I don't care about the couch fucking jokes. I think they're kind of funny. But even if they weren't, right, I don't think it really moves the needle either way. I don't think people care about that. I do think people care about the kid jokes.
Caring personally. Like, JD Vance took personal offense to it. MAGA took offense to it. Like, they were talking about how inappropriate it is and disgusting that it is. Like,
don't care, right? We've already engaged with the fact that I think MAGA is disingenuous. I care about how the swing voter, the person on the margin, the people who are deciding the election, right? I think I care about what they think, and I think.
Yeah, and you didn't see any cultural shift or anything, like going in favor of, like, the couch fucking memes or anything. Like, you didn't see people that were like resharing that or tweeting about it, or like being like, oh, this is really
I
funny.
saw that, but a lot of those people weren't even fucking Americans, right? Like, they weren't even. This is a problem with like that as a metric. Is there's a lot of bots out there. There's a lot of like Russian shills that are trying to just stir the pot. There's a lot of Canadians and things like that. And frankly, like, it was super popular in California, but we didn't need to win California, right? We didn't need to win these super blue states. I'll give you an example of what my advocacy for actually working, right? Where we have someone who doesn't engage in the edgy shit, right? Who nose to the grindstone, just positive, right? Has very positive messaging, very pro Democrat messaging, and has not only strong Democratic support, but strong bipartisan support. Josh Shapiro in the state of Pennsylvania, which is a purple state, has great, at least in the modern age, right? Great support, bipartisan support in Pennsylvania. It's because he doesn't fuck around with the dead kid shit. He doesn't play with that shit. He doesn't get involved in the culture war bullshit. He stays out of it, and he actually does what he needs to do to help and benefit Pennsylvanians. If he started indulging in the culture war shit, he would lose support. There would be no benefit to him. I would advocate to you, or I would posit to you, that if we as a whole, if Democrats as a whole started acting more like Josh Shapiro, we would have a renaissance of the Democratic Party. We would have much more support. People who were disaffected liberals would come home because, again, Josh Shapiro, solid, bipartisanly supported Democrat governor of a purple state. That is my evidence that my way works.
I see your point. My governor is Andy Bashir, and he's very milquetoast, very effective with his crowd of people, bipartisan support. But the state still voted MAGA. You have the difference that I'm making is that like it's wild the comparison from Destiny to Josh Shapiro and how we can't have politicians like that. Yet the other side is filled with politicians like that gets like insane amounts of support, like it's insane amount of backing. And the issue that you're talking about whenever they're going to show up to the midterms and lose in the midterms is more due to policy outcomes, to bad outcomes, to things that are being passed through with EOs or with the recent bill. But it's not the rhetoric itself; it's the outcome of the thing that will affect the voters' minds. That's my whole thing.
I think that we can see, right, that regardless of policies and what will actually happen, I think that by and large the voter base is influenced by rhetoric. It's influenced by culture war shit. That's what most people vote on, unfortunately. It's they vote on vibes, they vote on feels, they vote on which party is nicer to them or they feel is nicer to them, that cares about them more. One of the Donald Trump's most effective ads was she's for they, them, I'm for Americans, right? I'm for the working class. I'm for
Sure, which is indicative of policy, though, right? Like it's vibes based on policy. Even with immigration,
very disconnected, but yeah, kind of. I mean, kind of. But here's the thing. Again, none of this addresses my central point, though. Of we don't gain anything from the edgy tweets, the edgy jokes. We gain nothing. No one is voting for us now that wouldn't have voted for us before, and we lose people who are turned off and disgusted by that kind of behavior.
I think that we don't really gain anything because, for one, you have the entirety of MAGA that is, again, lockstep with shitting and again, like on that concept whenever Democrats do it. And then you have people within the Democratic Party that are also shitting on it, that are causing more of a division, that are not really backing it in a substantial way in contrast to MAGA. And then you have leftists that are just shitting on it in general because of like the lack of like how progressive people are. So it's like you have more division going against this potentially like rhetorically effective strategiges, and we don't even get the value of it because it's too divisive amongst ourselves.
Yeah, I just don't think that it's rhetorically effective. I think are like a lot of people in the chat, and I don't mean to hold this to you. I don't think this might not be your position, but a lot of people are saying it's galvanizing the base. I don't think it is. I think it's making the base stay home, right? I think it's making people who would otherwise go out to vote for us not do that. And is it unfair to the Democratic Party that a large-ish influencer like Destiny can make that effect on the margins? It's very unfair, but it's the reality of the world we live in. Thank you for calling in, sir. I don't have all day, unfortunately, but I appreciate you actually talking to me this. Thank you, Hunter.
Yep. Have a good one.
Okay. You think I'm not the base? Leonard is waiting. I don't know actually how to say it. I'm just gonna call you Leonard. Okay. You don't think I'm the base of the Democratic Party? I've been voting blue longer than you've been alive, frankly. If I'm not the base, right? Who is? Not right now, KO Dave. I'm closing out. We're winding down here. I just, like, you're saying I'm not the base, and yet every single election, every single one since 2000, so about 25 years, I voted blue. Okay? I may have missed a midterm here and there, right? But I voted for the Democrats. If I'm not the base, who is? And if I'm not the base, you have a problem. You understand that, right? If I am not the base of the Democratic Party, you guys have a problem. Because I'm a reliable voter. I will vote for the Democrats even if I think that some of their influencers are going down bad roads, okay? You would sacrifice me for someone who may or may not vote depending on their mood? You would sacrifice me for someone who won't vote unless the Democrats start, I don't know, making fun of more dead Republican children. You would give me away for that? You would exchange me for that? Okay, I guess. If you want to never win again. But you'll get to make a lot of angry tweets, I guess. You'll get to virtue signal on Twitch and YouTube and things, and you'll make a lot of money, perhaps. I guess. I guess you will. You'll get to feel good about kicking those dogs and puppies, right? Because they're evil or Republican or whatever. This idea that I'm asking you to lay down and take it and do nothing is just false. There's a lot of things that you can actually point out and do that are effective and that won't lose you votes, right? That will gain you more votes than you lose. My advocacy isn't to do nothing. Why do you think it is? The courtesy costs us nothing, frankly. There is no cost associated with courtesy, okay? There's no cost associated with civility. You lose nothing because of civility. Nothing. There's no one who stays home because you weren't an asshole. You don't lose a Supreme Court pick, okay, by being courteous. Jesus Christ, I don't know how you can understand this. You will never win again in America if you go down that road. You will never win another election. I'm telling you right now, Leonard, you will never win again. Never. You will lose consistently. J.D. Vance will be the next president. Then in 2032, you'll get another Republican president, and they will get worse and worse and worse, and they will use you as an example to justify their depredations, okay? You will be a useful tool in their arsenal, a bullet in their gun to point at the American people. You will help them. You will make it easier for them to enact the changes that they want. You understand this, correct? This is how this works. They are pointing to you and saying, this is the Democratic Party, and people are not voting for the Democratic Party. They hate you. The American people hate you. I am desperately trying to get the mantle back so that when people think of a Democrat, they don't think of you. They think of me. They think of people like me. Desperately need that. $5 from Alexander Wrin to say the question, Wick. We actually did lose the Supreme Court pick because we were courteous, technically. I disagree with that framing. We lost that pick because in 2013, Harry Reid decided to go nuclear on the filibuster. He used the nuclear option on presidential appointments, except for the Supreme Court. He made a carve out for the Supreme Court. Okay. Mitch McConnell at the time says, if you do this, if you open this door, if you go down this road, you're going to regret it. And by God, was he correct? Because he used that same reasoning. Okay. He used that same kind of, we had to do it because if we don't, right, this is going to be bad. We have to do it. He used that reasoning to further and just knock off that one carve out. Okay. Which was very easy for him to do since we opened the door already. That's what led to it. Right. So if you want to talk about like, what led to us losing the Supreme Court pick, you could draw a direct line from Harry Reid nuking the filibuster back in 2013 during Obama's term to the 2016 losing of the Merrick Garland Supreme Court pick. It's a direct line. It's directly responsible. Does that mean that we hold no responsibility to the fucky-wucky shit that Mitch McConnell did during that? Absolutely not. We should hold them responsible for that, right? They took a bad action and they made it worse, and that makes it also a bad action, right? But it would, like, if Harry Reid hadn't done that, we would have gotten that Supreme Court pick. They would not have been able to get away with what they did. Okay. I think we've exhausted today. Today, gang, look. Today was kind of a bust content-wise, I'm not going to lie. I'm sorry for today. Today wasn't my best panel ever, okay? It just wasn't. I don't know. Maybe, am I just feeling like, do I have like a haze or something? Like, am I under the doldrums? I don't know. I just didn't, it didn't work for me today. I'm not going to lie to you guys. It just didn't work for me today. I hope some of you enjoyed the after discussion or something, or maybe some of you enjoyed the panel. Maybe I'm just reading it wrong. I don't know. But tomorrow, gang, tomorrow's going to be a winner. I know it and I feel it in my bones. Do you know why tomorrow is going to be a winner? Okay. Do you know why tomorrow's going to be a winner? Because we're going to have Tolly. We're going to have Stardust. We're going to have Short Fat Otaku, Dev, okay? And we're going to be talking about Democrats and MAGA. And I think it's going to be a great discussion. I think it's going to be an excellent talk. I think you all should tune in. I'm excited for it. Are we going to talk about Epstein? We might, right? I do want to put a panel together on that, but the problem with putting a panel together on the Epstein shit is who would defend it? I don't know if I can find anyone serious that would defend the Trump admin's actions here. I just don't know if I can. I could find people who don't care or who say they don't care. I can find that. But I can't find anyone who will, like, defend it. So, I mean, like, if you can find me people, great. I'll put it together. So tomorrow's that. Tomorrow's going to be Tolly, Dev, and Stardust, and me. And we're going to have a great conversation. That should be fun. Sunday. So we're going to have a Sunday stream, gang. All right. And so, someone on Twitter called me out. Called me dumb, okay? We're not going to be talking about my dumbness. We might a little. We're going to be talking to History Speaks. Do you guys know who History Speaks is? He's a super big pro-Gaza, free Palestine advocate who says that the center left is excusing a genocide. Okay? That the center left Democrats are excusing a genocide and making a moral mistake by highlighting anti-Semitism. And we're going to have him on and talk to him. We might have some other people on. It might be just a one-on-one conversation. But That's going to be Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern, so a little longer, a little earlier than normal. Get Tali on with him. We're trying to get, well, Tali's on vacation that day, unfortunately. It's Sunday. But we're going to try to bring in either Apostate Prophet or we're going to try to bring in Avi Bitterman. But that's still in discussion. I don't know if either of them are going to accept. But yeah. Could be fun. Should be a discussion. Should be entertaining, at least. So yeah. Okay. Is there anything else from anyone else before we end this? No? Yes? Maybe? Okay. That said, I love you all. Thanks for sticking with us. Even today was a bit of a struggle. Yeah, I see it reflected in my numbers. Like, I see we peaked pretty good at almost 80, right? At the 6:30 mark, but then everyone tuned in to see what we were talking about and then tuned right the fuck out when they saw what we were talking about, right? Oh, buddy. Oh, I'm just so frustrated. Maybe I just booked wrong. It's possible. I don't know. I like Nonfon though. I do. Nonfon's my boy. We try to help Nonfon out. Nonfon's a good guy. I don't know. Okay. Talk to you guys later.